Welcome to the DeepMind headquarters in London. DeepMind is a world leader in artificial intelligence. They're widely known for their AlphaGo and AlphaZero AIs and applying their breakthroughs to scientific and medical problems. Similarly to how DeepMind has developed AIs for Go and chess, they are now working on an AI for StarCraft 2. StarCraft 2 is a real-time strategy game for the computer. In StarCraft, you choose one of three unique races, build an economy to advance your technology and gather units, and try to outwit your opponent. It takes a great deal of speed, dexterity, and strategic planning. If that sounds confusing, don't worry. I'll be walking you through the games we'll show here today. Let me introduce myself. I am Dan Simkowski, better known as Artosis. I've been playing StarCraft for 20 years now, and I'm a former pro gamer in StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2. And for the last 10 years, I have lived and commentated in Seoul, South Korea, analyzing the best players of the world. Alongside me, Rotterdam, Kevin Vanderkoy. Roddy, why don't you introduce yourself?
All right. Well, first of all, it's really awesome to be here together with you, Dan. We're both, I think, incredibly excited to see how this evening unfolds. But as you said, I'm Kevin Vanderkoy. I am a former professional Warcraft 3 player, but for the last 9 years, I've literally only played one game. That game is StarCraft 2. I have mostly focused on commentating StarCraft 2, though. In these 9 years, I have, I think, casted over 100 live professional StarCraft 2 tournaments. That's obviously awesome, but I still love playing the game as well. And actually, recently, for the very first time, broke into the top 50 of Europe. So this old man, Dan, still got it.
I know. We have been in this genre for a very long time. We love our RTS games, so we're very excited about today. And today we're going to be joined by a variety of guests. They're going to help us to understand what DeepMind is doing here with StarCraft 2. And we're going to actually be analyzing some replays of the DeepMind agent actually playing StarCraft 2 games. Now, Roddy and I will be seeing those games for the very first time, so we don't have any idea what's going to happen. We're going to learn alongside you, and of course, if you're new to StarCraft, we'll hold your hand through it and try to make you understand as best as we can. So, without further ado, I want to invite our first two guests up and talk about them a little bit. We have Tim Morton, the lead producer of StarCraft 2 from Blizzard, and Oriol Vignoles. He is the co-lead of the StarCraft team at DeepMind. Guys, how are you doing?
I'm super excited and pumped to be here.
Likewise, yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens.
Yeah, this is like the most excited I have personally ever been for an event. Roddy, as you said, you've done over 100 events. I'm right up there as well. I mean, this is just so exciting that DeepMind is doing all this. But Tim, I want to start with some questions for you. Why is Blizzard so kind of excited and eager to work with DeepMind?
Well, I believe StarCraft 2 is the highest skill competitive game out there, bar none. And StarCraft 2 being used as a benchmark for machine learning research really validates that sense of StarCraft 2's importance in the pantheon of esports.
And what exactly is the role of Blizzard here in this partnership?
Blizzard and the StarCraft 2 team has worked really hard to create a special version of StarCraft 2. We've actually released to the public some tools in this version of StarCraft 2, but also worked very closely with the team at DeepMind. It's not exactly the same version of StarCraft 2 that players get at home. It's got the same rules, but it is geared towards AI research, and there's some very important differences. I should mention that because we've geared it for research, it really isn't set up to do things like live observing. So the games that we're going to watch today will be from replays, and you know, watching live games, we have to watch from the player perspective.
Okay, and Oriol, to jump over to you, why does DeepMind look at StarCraft as the next game, the next thing that you want to kind of pursue and make an AI for?
Right. So, well, first and foremost, the mission at DeepMind is to build an artificial general intelligence. And to do so, it is quite important to benchmark how our algorithms, or our agents, as we call them, perform on a wide variety of tasks. So these tasks, there's quite a few of them that we've tackled in the past, Atari being perhaps the first video games that we kind of started from, as well as Go, chess, and many other games. And then for us, StarCraft afforded some pretty unique sort of research challenges that were for us kind of the obvious choice as a kind of a next step for our agents to perform at a very good level. And the one perhaps that I would highlight from this graph we're seeing is the fact that in StarCraft, you don't see the board all the time. There's this notion of imperfect information, as you probably know. And so, yeah, so that means that an agent must kind of predict, estimate what the other player is doing all the time. And there's all sorts of interesting things that emerge. And perhaps the other obvious one, as opposed to perhaps Go, is like the fact that it's real time. So you really must act now, otherwise you might lose the game. So those are a few of the highlights of why StarCraft is such an interesting research challenge for us.
Well, you guys announced this project a little over 2 years ago. So can you fill us in on what's been happening in that time?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, StarCraft is definitely not, we are not the first ones to realize the importance of this as a domain for NAI. And in this timeline, we kind of see that the history actually stretches for over 15 years or so. In fact, it was in 2003 that it was first sort of advocated that RTS games could be actually used to push the boundaries of AI. And then perhaps another kind of key moment was back in 2009, where the community, the open source community has been incredible. So they open sourced a tool for you to connect to StarCraft 1, the first version of StarCraft. And ever since then, there's been quite a few of activity in terms of AI versus AI tournaments. There's been quite a few of them going on for the last 8 years or so, where kind of people have built bots or agents to play the game and perform well. And that's been an incredible, exciting place to be. In fact, I used to, I participated in the very first, version there, like the 2010 competition. Oh. And I actually tested the agents, so I was asked to be the professional gamer to play against them. So that was kind of a fun kind of throwback. And then we really kind of, after sort of mastering Go in particular, we approached Blizzard, and we decided to try to open source first and foremost, like StarCraft 2. So we kind of opened the tools for everyone to use. There's been quite an incredible take on that as well. There's now competitions also on StarCraft 2. And then later, actually a few months ago at BlizzCon, I sort of announced perhaps what the first version of our agent AlphaStar is. I showed sort of the first few steps the agent took into playing the full game of StarCraft. And I must say, as a last kind of remark, that this was an incredible achievement, not, of course, done by myself alone. This is just really the tip of the iceberg. There's been an incredible effort from the team. I wish everyone could be here in the stage. Sadly, there's not enough space, but really, really incredible effort here at DeepMind to build AlphaStar.
All right, it sounds all awesome. Well, what can you tell us? What are we going to see today?
Right, so in terms of what the games are going to be like, there's a few match conditions that are useful to go over. Mm-hmm. So the first is the map. We are playing on just one map called Catalyst that used to be in the ladder, so it's just a full map. The game version we're playing is slightly old, is the 4.6.2. I believe that's the one that was played at BlizzCon for the finals back in November.
That's correct.
And then perhaps the last, not least detail is we are playing Protoss versus Protoss matchup. And then a couple of details perhaps is that the agent plays under limited actions per minute. It doesn't click insanely fast. We have more details on that later, but I think people probably are more excited to see the games first. And we also played sort of a series of 5 games against people, professional gamers that we'll announce in a second.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm pretty excited to see this AlphaStar going up against a pro gamer. Why don't we go ahead and talk? Who is the first pro gamer that we're going to be seeing here today?
So the pro gamer, I mean, obviously we tested the agent in-house against our own players at DeepMind. I am not that good, but there's actually someone who is reasonably good. And then sort of we decided, okay, the agent might be ready to face a slightly bigger challenge. And we talked to Blizzard about, can you recommend someone to play against, someone who knows the game, and so on and so forth. And they recommended us to contact Liquid TLO. So that's kind of that was very exciting for me because I used to watch his stream actually, and that's what we did.
Yeah, a very popular player indeed. Let's go ahead and learn a little bit more about TLO.
That was a really good play by TLO. So all of these Immortals have gone down, and it seems like TLO will get the job done here in the end.
He's going to drop Banelings on everything. The Immortals get their shields procced. Nothing else comes through here. Not enough force fields to stop TLO from steamrolling over everything on the ground.
Liquid the Little One, or as we call him, TLO, is an absolute veteran in the StarCraft 2 community. He's been around since pretty much day one, since the day that StarCraft 2 came out. He actually started off as a random player, had quite some success as a random player as well, then switched to Terran for a while. But over the last few years, he's mostly known for his Zerg, and of course his incredibly creative playstyle. That's what makes him truly stand out.
Indeed, he is really kind of a legend within the scene. So TLO, welcome up to the desk here. First, I just really want to hear, what was this journey like for you? How did you end up here at DeepMind?
First of all, thank you for having me. And it started with an email I saw in my inbox from Tim, who was introducing me to the DeepMind team via email and telling me that my feedback would be of interest to the project they're working on. At that point, I know very little because obviously there's a lot of secrecy behind this project. After very little time, I find myself on a plane to London and in this very building that we're in right now and discussing with Oriole different things about what would be fair for the match they're planning.
That's excellent. Tim, what made you think, oh, you know what, the guy that you need is TLO?
Well, at that point in time, we were looking for somebody who was fairly close and who we felt would provide really good analysis and good feedback that the research team could use to help advance their work.
Well, Dario, as we mentioned previously, we're going to be watching some PvP games today. Now, it's been a little while since you played Protoss, so how are those Protoss skills these days?
Well, I specifically prepared for the match playing Protoss. I played about 100 games of Protoss prior to the matches I played, and you know it's not on pro level, but it would probably still be in the top 1 percentile of all players on the planet. So it's decent, just not professional.
Okay.
Okay, and what kind of like mindset did you have coming into this? What types of expectations? You know, you're asked to play. Maybe not your main race, but you're still a professional gamer. What were you thinking coming into this match?
I saw the video at BlizzCon showing off what the agent can do, or at least giving a little bit of a glimpse, and I was extremely confident from seeing that because it wasn't much. There wasn't much time between BlizzCon and the matches I played in.
All right, and what about DeepMind? Did you guys have an opinion on how this would go? Was it just kind of a shot in the dark? Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, for us, it was very exciting just to get someone of his skill level, even though he was obviously playing his off race, and just seeing him sit down and just getting ready and seeing like the kind of amazing skills when when you see these professional gamers to play first, they really play very quickly. So that was extremely exciting. I was super like unsure what would happen. I definitely knew we would probably see some interesting games, but my confidence was not great, I must say. Yeah.
Okay. And Tim, how about you? What were you thinking when you hear, okay, TLO is going to be playing Protoss, he's a Zerg player normally. What do you know about it? What were you thinking?
Well, to me, the question in my mind was, is this AI agent going to be at an extreme? Is it going to be extremely cheesy? Is it going to be extremely turtley? Is it going to play completely unlike a human being? I had no idea.
All right. Well, we're about to get into the first replay. I know that that's what everyone wants to see. And Tim, we're going to be saying goodbye to you during that. So any final thoughts for you on this night?
I am so excited to see the outcome of these games, but also so impressed by what the DeepMind team has accomplished.
All right. Well, that's well said. We are just about ready to get into that replay now. We want to remind you of a few things. Rotterdam and I have not seen these games. There are 5 games that were played. We are going to watch 2 of TLO's games. These games were picked because they're entertaining and they show something strategically that's interesting. Of course, we don't know what that is yet. Now, as far as the rest of the games go, we will talk about them a little bit, and all the replays will be released on the website after the show. So you will be able to check those out. And I guess it's time to get into that game with our wonderful observer, Mapu Kevin Kremser. Let's do it.
All right, then. I'm so incredibly excited.
Oh, my God.
Like you've said multiple times, a lot of people here, they've seen this. We have no idea. I can't wait to really break down some PvP. Once again, guys, this was played on the BlizzCon patch, but that's still a very recent patch. So we have loaded into Catalyst. All the games will be played on Catalyst. All the games will be Protoss versus Protoss, but Dan, I can't wait. Obviously, we're looking at the main base of Liquid's TLO right now, but I want to see that other main base.
Yes, so this is AlphaStar. This is an AI that we don't know how good it is yet. And we'll go over some of the fine details of the game, but already we have some interesting things happening for a Protoss versus Protoss. You notice that up here? TLO is making buildings right at that small choke point, that small ramp. This is a tactic that we use in Protoss vs. Protoss to make kind of a wall so that your opponent can't get into your base. But AlphaStar is skipping that altogether.
There are very few Protosses in Europe that don't wall off. I like to think that I'm one of them. Now, what you guys can maybe ask yourself, what's the benefit of not walling off? Technically, you save a little bit of money. Like, you save a few resources, because whoa, that's a lot of probes, by the way, just chasing around. This is not optimal gameplay, I think, Dan.
No,
that's
yet.
Quite a few probes. I mean, technically, you can say it's scouting, but that's a lot of probes bouncing around, and at the highest level of StarCraft 2, we like to think that we're all very efficient and very clean with our build orders. So every probe that can be gathering resources early on, it's very worried about cannon rushes, it seems like.
Yes. Yeah, and a cannon rush is kind of a very aggressive early game strategy that could be used against it, but TLO, we can see, is not going for anything like that. Now, in the meantime, we have all these probes. They're just kind of gathering resources, minerals and gas, to build these buildings so they can build units to get out on the map, to control area, much like any board game that you might see. But it's just, I'm so interested right now because I see, for instance, TLO is making 2 adepts.
Yep.
And this is the main reason why you'll make a wall at your ramp, so that those adepts can't come in and start to destroy your probes.
Nope. Even though the AlphaStar has created kind of a nice SimCity, right? There's a little bit of a circle around the mineral line, so you can say that the workers are somewhat protected. In general, especially since TLO used double chrono boost, that's an ability of the Nexus, which makes you build units a little bit quicker. In a regular game, if we are casting this in a normal way, we say that these 2 adepts of TLO are guaranteed to kill 8-9 workers. And in StarCraft 2 terms, that means that you are incredibly far ahead. If you can pick off that many workers of your opponent early on, you are going to be very far ahead.
Well, right now we see the adepts using their shade ability to get in here and start attacking probes. You see that TLO is already eliminating some of these workers. Now, AlphaStar is trying to target them down as best as he can, but this is pretty significant damage, I would say.
I must say this is a really interesting exchange, because even though Dario was able to pick off 4 or 5 probes there, which we normally say is a very big deal, you could say that the maximum amount of workers that you want to have on your minerals in this phase in the game is 16, maybe 18. AlphaStar technically still has that, at least. It's mining a little less gas, but when it comes to mining minerals, it's still mining more than enough, and it did pick off 2 adepts. So I wouldn't say it's the greatest start for AlphaStar. I don't think it's the cleanest or most optimal start, but it's also not game over by any means.
Yeah, its balancing of the economy is very interesting, because, for instance, there's only 2 workers on gas on one of these geysers, 3 is optimal. And, you know, AlphaStar is skipping that. TLO comes in again, is harassing more of those probes, killing them off. And, I mean, I feel like it's a good position right now for TLO overall.
Yep. Well, it seems like his units are a little bit out of position to keep these 2 up. Look at the micro.
Wow.
AlphaStar actually getting quite some damage done. I mean, that evens up the score at least.
Well, the worker count we can see at the bottom right now, it's 24 workers for TLO and 25 for AlphaStar. So overall, I guess AlphaStar has recovered from the early game.
Yep. Normally losing 10 probes in a 4-minute and 25-second game, that's way too many. We'll say that that's too much damage. That's not, you know, you're not supposed to take that much damage. But this game is not over by any means. As we saw, AlphaStar is also going for the robotics facility, is getting a Warp Prism. This Warp Prism is going to allow AlphaStar to be aggressive on the other side of the map, and should be able to pull off some pretty nice micro, I assume.
Yes. Now, this strategy in particular is really, really micro-intensive, as you said. You have to control your units just very precisely, which we've already seen that AlphaStar is quite good at. you're going to be kind of juggling stalkers, these big long-range shooting units in and out of the warp prism, trying to dodge taking damage and doing damage to your opponent in the meantime.
I love how AlphaStar is truly respecting the Oracle as well. It's like, knows there is an Oracle out, we'll just leave a couple stalkers at home, but at the same time still try to make something happen on the other side of the map. And this is actually kind of scary for TLO because, yeah, Phoenix is about to come out soon, but once again, this Warp Prism is going to allow AlphaStar to micro these units incredibly well. And, I mean,
well, so far the micro's good. It's not like perfect micro that we're watching at the moment, but look at this. Getting backwards, kind of kiting everything with these stalkers, some good juggling going on. That Warp Prism still alive, though very low on health.
Yeah, a couple of Stalkers are very low on health as well. Nice pickup there on the Oracle. So both air units went down for TLO, but still has an expand. Is still trading out quite decently, I would say, in the middle of the map. But if you take a look at the army supply, the army of AlphaStar is actually quite a bit bigger now. Obviously, we left 4 or 5 units on the other side of the map.
Yeah.
So those units can technically join for the next push, and since the shield battery went down for TLO as well, this can actually get a little bit dicey.
You're quite right. Even though TLO right now has an economic advantage having 2 bases to 1, I don't know that he's going to be able to hold this assault from AlphaStar.
I think this is maybe a moment where you can see that TLO is not a natural Protoss player, because I think the start was good for TLO, and I think there was time to be ready for this. It's still not over, but the army of TLO is very small compared to the army of AlphaStar.
Yeah, the TLO is in a dire position right now. These stalkers just going in and out, dodging all the damage that TLO is trying to give to him, and kind of choosing when to take these battles. It feels to me like so far these attacks have been very well planned by AlphaStar.
And they're relentless. Does not stop. I mean, Tim said he was worried that perhaps the AlphaStar was going to be incredibly turtly. Well, it seems like the opposite. Turtling is a term we use for a player that just never attacks. I think it's safe to say that AlphaStar is the opposite. It loves to attack.
Well, that is it. The GG is called. The good game here from TLO. And the first game from AlphaStar against a pro gamer goes to AlphaStar. Before we get into that too much, I do need to introduce our new guest up here at the desk. We have Dave Silver, co-lead of the AlphaStar program here at DeepMind. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, the pleasure is truly mine and Roddy's, okay? Because we just watched an AI beat TLO, a legendary pro gamer. Please talk to us about this. What is going on here? How did this happen?
Well, this is, of course, an exciting moment for us. We have a team that's been working on this and ramping up our development over the last few months, and this represents a milestone where we actually, for the first time, saw an AI that was actually able to defeat a professional player.
TLO, what were you kind of thinking as you played this very first pro match against AlphaStar?
So I started the match very confidently, especially when I saw those probes in the natural. I thought, okay, this is not right. You know, something odd is going on here. I thought, too, it was very worried about cannon rush. And I must admit, I feel I should have won that match, but made a lot of mistakes because I'm not used to being a Protoss player. But even though I lost the first map, I was still very confident because it was a one-base push. You know, you can lose to that, but I felt like I would be very prepared in the next matches.
Well, the micro in that push seemed very, very strong, and I'm sure something that all the people at home are wondering, all the StarCraft 2 players at least, is what kind of speed does AlphaGo have? Can we talk about that a little bit? We measure speed in APM, actions per minute in StarCraft, so can you guys speak to it a bit?
Yeah, that's right. So we thought a lot about fairness and trying to make a system, make AlphaStar in a way where it would actually play the game fairly and not just kind of win the game by playing an insane number of clicks or playing in a way that a human just simply couldn't. So one of the ways in which you measure how fast a player is able to play the game is by these actions per minute, these APMs that you mentioned. And what we see here is actually the number of APMs that both AlphaStar and a human pro like TLO will actually use in a game. And what we see is that there's often times where it's necessary to actually use more APMs or fewer APMs, but the overall AlphaStar actually used considerably fewer APMs than TLO or a human pro would in this kind of situation. And so that indicates that actually it's not just winning this game by clicking insanely, but actually by doing something much smarter than that.
Yeah, and I do have to mention, you know, as a longtime StarCraft analysts, that's not a particularly high APM that we're seeing from AlphaStar. So very impressive indeed.
And on top of that, it's probably worth mentioning as well that actually, there's another real factor here, which is whether AlphaStar is playing with like a superhuman reaction time. But actually, we measured how quickly it reacts to things. So if you actually measure the time from when AlphaStar actually perceives the game, when it actually observes what's going on, and then it has to think about it, kind of processes it with its neural network, and ultimately communicates the action that it chooses back to the game, that actual time length, that kind of reaction time, is around 350 milliseconds, which is, again, actually really on the kind of low side, the slow side for compared to human pros.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's very impressive that it's playing that well. That I do have one more question as to kind of the fairness of it. How is AlphaStar actually looking at the game?
So if we think about how AlphaStar actually perceives the game, it's very much as if it's kind of zoomed out so that it could see the whole map at once. And so if you think about it, what it's actually able to see is kind of depicted here in this kind of video. And AlphaStar is able to zoom out and see all of its own units at once, including all of their attributes such as health or shields. But in addition, it gets to see any enemy units which are not, which are actually visible. In other words, they're actually not obscured by fog of war, and they're not invisible. So anything which can be seen by a human player if they were to move their camera to that position, all of that information is available to AlphaStar straight away, given this kind of zoomed out sense of the game. So you might say, well, humans, when they play the game, they actually have to do something additional, which is to manage something which pro players call their economy of attention. They have to think about where they're going to click and where they're going to focus the camera on. And that's an important part of the game, to decide where to focus their camera and what they're going to see. So what we actually did was we analyzed how AlphaStar actually plays the game as well. And what we saw was that internally, even though it's seeing things in this kind of zoomed out view, it's actually having to manage something similar with this kind of implicit focus of attention. And what we did was we measured that focus of attention, and we saw that it actually changes that focus of attention and sees about 30 different screens per minute, which is actually very similar to a typical number that human pros would use.
Now, I've got one big question. Something that we see, obviously, very often in professional StarCraft 2 is if we are playing a best of 5, or in this case, a 5-game series, we adapt. Like, if we lose a game, we will not necessarily go with the same strategy. If we win, we also may not necessarily go with the same strategy, because you don't want to become too predictable. Does AlphaStar have this thought process as well? Like, will it do the same build again because it won game 1, or can we expect something else?
So we'll have a more clear explanation, hopefully, in the next few minutes. But what I would say about that is that currently AlphaStar actually doesn't care about what happened in the games. So in a way, it's playing sort of the 5 games independently.
Okay.
And obviously, it is true that as a human, and I myself played, there's a lot of kind of mindset that you get into if you've lost, won, and so on the games. And what we're seeing here in AlphaStar, it does not do that.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to go into the next replay pretty soon, but that's actually going to be of game 3 of 5. We're skipping game 2. Again, it's going to be posted on the blog of DeepMind after the show. But TL, can you quickly run us through what game 2 was like?
So because the way game 1 went down, I felt very confident that I just need to play a clean defensive game, and that I should easily defeat the agent that I thought I was with Tim there a little bit. Oh, it looks like it's just going to be the ultimate cheese machine that is just going to do risky one-base all-ins, because that's straightforward. That's how humans started playing the game. So maybe that's how AlphaStar started playing the game. And I played very defensive, and then it basically played Turtle into a weird 1 Stargate fleet beacon with carriers, and it never attacked until it basically had 200 supply carrier army, and I managed to almost come back by just killing all the interceptors with Archons. But then it just had 15 carriers with 3/3 upgrades, and eventually I just lost the carrier versus carrier game.
So 0-2, Dario?
Wow. Wow. Well, I am very excited to see what is in game number 3. So let's go ahead and get into that replay and see what other strategies AlphaStar has in store for us.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Mass carriers. Why not? The complete opposite of game 1.
Yes.
Well, I guess that answers
you couldn't get further.
Yeah.
Wow.
I guess that answers that question as well. All right, we have loaded into the 3rd game of this 5-game series, as this time in the right bottom side of Catalyst. We're looking in the main base of Liquid TLO.
And in the top left, we have AlphaStar. Once again, of course, we already kind of went over this. It doesn't look like it wants to wall in at its ramp, so, you know, kind of has that open main base.
No, I think there are ways that you can get away with not walling off at the ramp. We went over that a little bit in Game 1, why it is optimal, or at least we think it is optimal to wall off in PvP. I think the way that AlphaStar defended it in Game 1 is not perfect. Like, I technically think that you can open up with the 2 adepts that TLO did. He did quite a bit of damage. If you shade out with 2 more adepts after that, I truly believe that you can do enough economic damage that can truly hurt the opponent, where it almost becomes impossible to come back. I mean, the main reason, I don't know how this went for you, but, you know, when I got contacted to get here, I was obviously very excited and had no idea what to expect. And I was like, man, I'm actually a bit nervous. Like, I don't know. What do you guys want from me? They're like, well, we ask you to come here to basically just observe and tell us whether or not this is good StarCraft.
Yeah.
I definitely think it was good StarCraft, but not perfect StarCraft.
Certainly. I would agree with you so far in what we've seen. I mean, it's very interesting to hear that Game 2 was like a very quick carrier game, because we don't really see that. We'll have to check those replays out later, but I guess we are going to see. This game was chosen, of course, because it is an interesting game and strategically something that people will want to see. So
it's really interesting to see how late AlphaStar saturates their gases, which is actually pretty funny, because I think that the TLO actually a while ago, when we often get questions, right, whether we're a caster or a pro gamer, is like, you know, what is the thing that I should focus on the most in the lower leagues? And one of the biggest mistakes that lower league players make is that they take their gases very early, not just in the main base, but in their second base, in their third base, in their fourth base. People take gases too early, and obviously if you take your gases too early, you mine less minerals, but you need minerals to technically create everything else. I think AlphaStar is maybe overdoing it with delaying it that much on one base. We like to think that this is not optimal, but hey, maybe the AlphaStar knows something that we don't.
Well, I mean, it knows something TLO doesn't know, that's for sure. So right now we have AlphaStar making a couple of adepts, a couple of stalkers over on TLO's side. TLO's play, to be fair, after that kind of little joke aside, it looks like professional play. You know what we're watching, like the placement of all the buildings, the way he's moving around with his units. This is what we would consider like a pretty standard Protoss versus Protoss opening.
I actually love this. The adepts going through the middle of the map with shading.
Oh my gosh.
That's some pro level play.
That was...
If you talk about minor things, like if you don't do this, if you don't let that shade finish up, your adepts will run straight into the forces of your opponent. They get A, revealed, they B, take a lot of damage, and C, you're at risk of losing one. That was a really good move.
You saw where the shade finished. The adepts were in that tall grass area, and that's actually kind of a big deal. Like, you can't see them from outside, but they can see you. So that seems like it was a very expertly done move there by AlphaStar.
I love how it went up the ramp. It picked off one probe as quickly as it could. This shade is not going to accomplish too much. I wonder if TLO cancels that pylon. He does.
Oh! He actually waits because it is a pylon and sneaks in right there.
But unfortunately, this one of that, its time is most likely limited. So TLO switching things up here, and he's going for the robotics facility. So perhaps a little bit similar to what AlphaStar did in Game 1. And in general, in StarCraft 2, we like to say that if you're doing the exact same build as your opponent, defending is easier than attacking.
Now, AlphaStar is kind of doing what we saw in Game 1, right? It's getting that robotics, it's getting a lot of stalkers. I expect to see a warp prism made here momentarily.
You see the amount of probes that AlphaStar has in the main base. I mean, it is technically mining a few more minerals, but in StarCraft 2, we like to say that 16 probes on a mineral line is perfect. Technically, you mine a little more with 18, a little more with 20, and a tiny bit more with 22 and 24. But that difference is so small that you technically don't want to go there as a competitive StarCraft 2 player.
Yeah, it's very true. We normally try to minimize the amount of extra workers you have on a base like that, especially if you're doing something kind of aggressive. Now, seeing the robotics bay being made, this helps your tech a little bit. It lets you make more sophisticated units like Colossus. You can get some upgrades in it. You can make disruptors. And while it's not completely unheard of to get it on one base, it's a very rare thing to see in a Protoss versus Protoss match.
True. I must say I love the decision to not commit to the attack, though. In the first game that we watched, the first replay as well that we casted, we saw clearly that there was weakness in the defenses of TLO, and then maybe AlphaStar sensed that. AlphaStar picked off a couple of units and eventually was able to squeeze out a victory. This time it seems that TLO is a lot more prepared. And then immediately we see the decision of AlphaStar to actually go for the expand as well. I mean, that is the way you want to play StarCraft.
Yeah, no, TLO right now looking very solid. He's playing kind of a defensive game, but, you know, his economy is much stronger than what AlphaStar is at right now. He's getting into his Twilight tech after that Robo, so he can get kind of some more mobility and power into his gateway units. Looks like he is going to go for the charge upgrade, but right now AlphaStar is coming across the map with his Stalkers, but where is that Disruptor?
Yeah, I think they're just waiting at home. Okay, they're trailing a little bit behind, but perhaps this is just one of those moments where, you know, as a player, you always want to be active. You don't want to sit at home too long. If you have units, you want to try to get some value out of these units, and it's not always about getting efficient trades or trying to get a massive advantage, because just being out on the map often keeps your opponent busy. If your opponent sees forces, there is a bigger chance they make a mistake.
Okay, here we go. He's actually coming up this ramp, uses that Disruptor shot. A couple force fields come out from TLO, and he actually does a very good job parrying this attack from AlphaStar.
Yeah, very risky by AlphaStar to go through a ramp like this. This is a very narrow ramp. A single force field can technically split this army in half.
Yeah.
These are not...
Whoa. Wow.
Low.
Yeah, very nice micro there by AlphaStar, guiding that in. Now, that Disruptor, it's a very high-tech unit. It does a lot of area of effect damage. So that little orb that you see come out of it, you can't shoot it often, but when it hits, it does a lot.
But this is what I meant. Normally, we don't go up and down a ramp like this too many times because a single force field can shut this kind of movement down.
That's right.
If your army gets, you know, split in half, you can technically lose half of it and not really get anything in return. So these are very risky plays.
Yeah, it really is coming up this ramp. Oh, another good hit, though. I mean, the Disruptor is getting some work done here for AlphaStar, who, once again, is super saturating his Nexus here.
Definitely creating a pretty big advantage since it has been building probes non-stop as well. As our observer is showing us, the income right now on the side of AlphaStar quite a bit higher than the income of TLO. Even though the Nexus was later, it's been ahead in workers throughout the majority of this game. Wow, these Disruptor hits are becoming ridiculous.
Yeah.
TLO lost his entire army to these two Disruptors.
It's going to back up. I mean, TLO's economy looks like it's going to get a boost if he can live through this, but AlphaStar is just continually pushing in. He's even getting a second robotics at home, which is a very rare thing to see, but he's pushing right in.
The value of these disruptive shots doesn't lie, right? So, you know, might get a few more out. I think these are moments where technically AlphaStar could be even more aggressive because it's in an incredibly good position. It has picked off the majority of the forces of TLO. Of course, you want to be rather safe than sorry in general in StarCraft 2 when you attack, but these disruptive shots have done some phenomenal damage, and AlphaStar is actually in a tremendous position here.
Yeah, it's really interesting to watch AlphaStar just push in here non-stop, keeping that pressure on. Now, TLO has actually gotten a pretty decent set of units here together, so finally pushes him back down that ramp.
And once again, it's important to mention that this was played on what we like to call the BlizzCon patch. The Disruptor has changed quite a few times over the years, but this is still the Disruptor that shoots forward, what we like to call a Purifier Nova. But it will blow up as soon as it connects with a unit. So you have to be very careful, because if it connects with an enemy unit, but your own units are too close, you will end up losing your own units as well.
Yeah, it will destroy anything that it blows up on here. Now, continually pushing up this ramp. You know, AlphaStar is having a very hard time with this small choke point. I see a lot of good redeeming things about his play, but this is one thing that no professional would really ever do, trying to get up that small choke.
That was a phenomenal disruptive shot there, but you're spot on, Dan. We are very worried in general to go up ramps, because once again, the Force Field is an incredibly powerful spell in Protoss vs. Protoss. If you don't have Archons or Colossi, which is our late game units, you can't really break Force Field, so we would normally be very, very hesitant to even think about going up a ramp like that.
Now, TLO is actually attacking into AlphaStar for the first time here. This Disruptor count has actually gotten incredibly high, though.
Yeah, it's also something that I think you normally don't want to push into. TLO getting very ambitious here. Obviously, did drop. That's a lot of observers. I mean, we have seen this once or twice in our life, but perhaps AlphaStar lost a couple games against Dark Templars against his It's like, I want to make sure that never happens again.
Yeah, the observer that we see flying there that we were just looking at, it just detects anything that's invisible for you. There are some invisible units in StarCraft, and so you'll use this for that situation.
Or AlphaStar is telling us that F2 is the optimal hotkey to use. The F2 is the select all army hotkey. We have always a very divided opinion. Some players love it and some players hate it. Some players will say you should never use it, but technically if you press F2, if you haven't changed the hotkeys in StarCraft 2, you'll select all units at once, and that's often when you see 5 observers flying next to each other.
Well, AlphaStar is pushing up right now again. Just continuous blasts here from the Disruptors. And it almost feels like there's a little bit of sloppiness coming out of AlphaStar with the units. But at the same time, we don't have like the blink upgrade, which is very common to see in this situation.
I love that move. AlphaStar just immediately recalling as soon as it realized that it was a little bit out of position. Oh, what's that? Okay.
Okay. Nothing to attack up there, but okay.
Those are not shots we would normally make, but I do like that move, bringing the army back home, knowing that TLO was in the middle of the map and trying to respond to it. So, man, it never stops with Disruptors. How many Disruptors do we currently have out on the map? 11 more.
11 Disruptors.
Canning would be so proud.
This is really kind of wild to see. Like, I have never seen a game that looked like this, and so far, AlphaStar actually has more supply. If you look at those numbers at the bottom, 152 of 181 against 116 of 133. So it's 155 supply against 116, which generally we look at that and just say, okay, that's a pretty decent advantage right there. You just have a lot more units on the battlefield.
It's been a really interesting game, this one, because it started off, you'd normally say, in a good way for TLO, but then AlphaStar really brought it back, had a couple of phenomenal trades. And now it just feels like we're in a phase in the game where we're looking at an amount of Disruptors that we don't normally see in Protoss versus Protoss. I mean, Disruptors are fantastic units, but you make 5, 6, maybe in some crazy scenarios you make 8. We see 13 right now out of AlphaStar.
And they're all moving around together as well. You know, there's definitely situations where you're trying to get sneaky with these units because they can do so much damage. But just keeping them together right now, AlphaStar definitely has a strategy and is sticking to it.
Meanwhile, we see TLO going for a couple of Zealots on the right top side, and at the same time also building Phoenixes at home. I do like this, because I think one thing that we have seen over the last 5-6 minutes is that AlphaStar often runs around with the entire army in one place. TLO is starting to take some advantage of this.
Yeah, that's true.
By, you know, making a minor attack on the left top side, sending a couple units to the right top side. Perhaps trying to make it more complicated for AlphaStar.
I like that TLO is definitely learning and adapting here. Getting some units that are actually very good against Disruptors. Disruptors can't hit units that fly, so these Phoenixes are going to come around and lift the Disruptors up and really cause a problem for them.
Hallucinated Void Ray. A fake Void Ray, but yes, you're spot on. TLO is building a unit. Gotta be very careful being aggressive. Once again, a couple of these forces of TLO do go down. I mean, supply-wise, it really doesn't look good. The numbers that obviously are next to the names. AlphaStar is close to having the biggest army possible in StarCraft 2. Not necessarily the most optimal army, because this is a pretty crazy composition, but you cannot go over 200 supply, so I guess you gonna have to attack
AlphaStar has done what we call maxing out. AlphaStar has maxed out his supply, and it's just a gigantic army, as you can see. Mostly Disruptors. 134 army supply overall, so definitely feels like AlphaStar can win a battle at this point. 18 Disruptors. Never have seen that in a pro game.
No, that is an insane amount. There's also a lot of Stalkers and no blink upgrade. This is also not something we see at very high level StarCraft 2. This army composition, however, is incredibly strong, and I think TLO is in a world of trouble because a couple of Phoenixes... Ooh! Oh, no. Oh my goodness. Well, that's a way to not be maxed out anymore then.
Yeah, AlphaStar blows up a lot of its own units here. The Phoenix is coming in and lifting up so many of the Disruptors that will cancel their shots as they come out. And it looks like TLO is going to take this battle pretty decisively.
But still down in supply quite a bit. I mean, that was an interesting battle. AlphaStar clearly one of these Purifying Novas of the Disruptor connecting with the own forces. Meant that TLO was going to get a better fight there because a lot of units went down before the fight. But, I mean, now at the same time, AlphaStar is still getting a couple of phenomenal Disruptor hits off, and TLO simply doesn't have the amount of units anymore to really fight an army like this.
No, not too many. But TLO has taken the 4th base. I feel like TLO has done a very good job of economy management the way that we understand it as humans so far, you know, keeping that mining going. But AlphaStar just completely relentless.
Double observer once again, as recall is being used on all these disruptors as well. +2. You know what I think is one of the most interesting things about this game? That the AlphaStar has not decided to go for Blink. A lot of Stalkers have been produced in this game. Oh, Blink actually finished up.
Yeah, just very, very recently.
Okay.
And that's something that you normally see on the pro level. You get Blink with your Stalkers. It makes you very mobile. Your Stalkers can kind of just flash to different locations like that we just saw.
Yeah. Okay, then it does make sense. But it was late, because during that first big battle, we didn't have it yet.
Yeah, it just finished.
We don't often see high-level games with 20+ Stalkers and no Blink upgrade. That's just something that we don't see very often.
Well, AlphaStar seems to be coming in once again with just about twice the army supply. It feels like AlphaStar is going to be able to take this game.
Well, not if it keeps blowing up its own units. But, I mean, the amount of disruptors seems like it's a little too much to deal with. But it's not an optimal composition, but it seems like these numbers don't lie. GG once again. Wow, then.
Wow, indeed. TLO, what are you thinking? These are 3 pretty drastically different games that you've played at this point.
Yeah, I think that was the main difficulty I have. I'm not a Protoss player, and when I was practicing, most of the humans I played against played very standard StarCraft, so that was kind of my knowledge base. Going into these games, none of these games looked like any of the games I played on ladder, so it was very tricky for me to counter that, because once again I assumed after the first match I'll probably have a good idea how to play against this agent. I did not. Every single game I was again in the dark, and I needed to come up with how to counter the strategy on the fly, which proved a little difficult for me, especially not being a Protoss professional.
I mean, the 3 of us, all we do is watch and play StarCraft, and the fact that none of us have really seen anyone play like this definitely kind of adds that crazy factor into it, where it's very hard to come up with that on the fly. But I got to know now, guys, Oriel, Dave, how do you actually train AlphaStar?
Yeah, so the process of training actually starts with something that I was describing at BlizzCon, which is called imitation learning. And what this means essentially is that we take many replays from you guys and many of you watching at home, and we try to sort of understand the basics of StarCraft through just essentially looking at a situation that a human is in and trying to imitate the best we can that particular move. So here we should see sort of how that kind of first step of the process happens. And that is what I showed at BlizzCon, that kind of almost V0 of AlphaStar, its inception, which uses, by the way, not only professional games, it uses 3,500 MMR and high. So really many of you probably have kind of helped, in a way, train the first version. And then what happens next, Dave is going to tell us.
Okay, so we train AlphaStar using something we call the AlphaStar League. And the first competitor of the league is actually the neural network that's trained from human data, as Oriel just described. And then at each subsequent iteration, new agents are forked and branched from that previous agent and added to the AlphaStar League. These agents then play matches against other competitors in the league. And depending on what happens in those matches, the neural networks are updated by a process called reinforcement learning so as to defeat all of those different strategies as effectively as possible. In addition, the competitors are encouraged to specialize by adapting their personal learning objectives. For example, some of them might have preferences to play against particular opponents, or incentives to build a particular unit type. And finally, at the end of the AlphaStar League, we select the least exploitable set of 5 agents out of the league. That's something we call the Nash of the league. And that's the 5 different agents that TLO was then actually playing against.
Oh, so he was actually playing against 5 different AlphaStars that won an actual league where you had almost like just a huge amount of AlphaStars playing against each other over and over and learning from each other?
That's right. Yeah. So basically, this you can see this league as kind of the process in which AlphaStar learns the game, learns about worker rushes, cannon rushes. Some agents kind of maybe obsessed with a certain unit. That agent we saw was a bit obsessed with disruptors, as we saw.
And that was one of the 5 best.
Exactly. So then the cool thing is that then this kind of knowledge of all these agents that we've trained through time gets distilled into like this what we call distribution over agents, in which then we would just kind of play a best of 5 or a 5-set game here. And what's important to also note is that the order was also randomized. So I said before, there's no adaptation between games. That means that we kind of look what are the 5 agents that stand out, and we kind of toss a coin, order them in some way. That's the way in which the player experienced them.
The AlphaStar League sounds awesome, first of all. So how long does the AlphaStar League run?
So the league here was run for about a week. So the first training process of supervised learning from replays takes about 3 days. And that gets you to perhaps a platinum level player. It's hard to estimate. And then the league itself, as I was saying, was run for 7 days.
Okay, and what does that mean, like if you would compare it to, let's say, us playing for 7 days?
Yeah, so 7 days of, real time is actually longer, slightly longer in kind of StarCraft. As Tim was saying before, we get a binary that can run the game quite much faster. So the most experienced agents we see today have played about 200 years of StarCraft 2.
Slightly.
200 years of StarCraft 2.
Yeah. It's a fun life.
I guess it is. I aspire to be one of your agents. Wow, that's... I'm kind of caught off guard there. I do want to ask you guys about, like, how many of these agents have really bizarre strategies? Because I feel like we've heard about one. We just watched one. The first one seemed kind of normal, but how weird are these strategies getting?
So the beautiful thing about the actual training process of the AlphaStar League is that it actually develops a whole diversity of different strategies over time. So you can think of this as mirroring the way that that professional players started playing the game of StarCraft when it was first released, that they would start off discovering one kind of strategy for playing the game, but then someone else would find like some counter strategy to that strategy, and that would lead to some new way to play the game. And over time, a whole set of different ways to play was kind of introduced into the ladder where pros were playing against each other. And we see something very similar emerging over time in the AlphaStar League, where it starts off doing really crazy things, a lot of worker rushes initially, zealot rushes, this kind of thing, and then over time developing more and more interesting strategies, such as some of the ones that we've seen.
Wow.
Is there another strategy that truly stood out for you guys? That I mean, a funny story to share, maybe?
Maybe, interestingly, sometimes very nice proxy strategies emerge. I'm not a StarCraft 2 professional player, so I cannot judge or whether these exist or not. But it's interesting that even when the agents are not incentivized to do a proxy, I mean, they just play just kind of to beat the league. We see that emerging sometimes. Then some other times it goes back to doing like Phoenixes or like but that, I think the emergence of proxy plays is quite notable. And I'm sure in the replays you guys can kind of analyze and tell us if anything weird emerged that we just don't understand enough, probably.
Well, so far we've definitely seen some of that. That's the last replay that we're actually going to watch of your series, TLO, but you did play games 4 and 5. Can you kind of go over them for us a little bit? Tell us about them.
Yes, of course. So game 4, once again, completely different from anything I've played against before. And as we know now, it's actually basically a different agent that I played against, which I didn't know in my matches. So, countering what I did before wasn't very helpful. It played massive amounts of Plink Stalkers, and we saw some really nice Plink Micro, and it basically just outmaneuvered my units. It did very human moves there as well. You know how usually you Plink away with Stalkers in a normal battle? But once you have more Stalkers, you Plink on top of the enemy army. Exactly that happened as well. And I actually had some DTs in my base as well. So
very much like a human player.
Yeah, very, very Protoss typical style. So I lost that game too. And in game number 5, I decided I identified a weakness in AlphaStar that it didn't scout very well. So my plan was to build a proxy pylon in the enemy base and go for a 4-gate. However, coincidentally, AlphaStar also decided to go for a proxy and put a proxy pylon in my natural and went for 4-gate. I went for 3-gate, but unfortunately my pylon was just 1 inch off and got scouted. And I had 3 gates, but my pylon got unpowered. And AlphaStar beat me with the proxy. It was really interesting that we both decided to go for the same strategy there. But yeah, it was a full sweep 0-5.
Wow. Well, again, you are actually a Zerg main race player. But having played this, and you're a very good Protoss player, there's no doubt about that. What are your overall impressions after having played these 5 games?
So even though I was defeated, I actually still felt very confident that if I would have more time playing Protoss and if I would have more matches, that I would win a significant amount of the matches. Because even though I lost all of them, some of them were close and I could identify some problems with it, and I felt if I would have another week to train Protoss, I would easily defeat these agents as well. So, you know, I didn't feel too bad about losing.
Okay. And for you guys, like, your agent beat its first pro gamer 5-0. You must be pleased with that. What did you think about the way that it performed?
Yeah, so it was an incredible just experience for the whole team to be, you know, in the room watching a pro gamer. I remember actually after the first game, he said, "Oh guys, you've done it." So that was kind of a relief and just a kind of happiness moment. And then every game after that was kind of a show that the approach we took was really working. You know, at the same time, we realized, well, we won 5-0. Again, it's not obviously TLO's main race. He plays Zerg. As a Protoss, he's, you know, mid-grandmaster, so still extremely good. So, you know, we decided, you know, that was kind of, we were celebrating, you know.
We might have had 1 or 2 drinks involved in this little story, and we were celebrating and out with the team, and one thing led to another, and we started discussing and realizing that, you know, given that we had won 5-0, that maybe we didn't know the upper bound of how strong our agent really was. And that maybe it would be a good idea to actually get over someone who wasn't playing their off race and actually play them. So this is when we hatched the idea to go back to the office, press the green button and restart training on our agents and invite over a really top professional Protoss player.
All right. Care to spoil it for the audience?
Sure. So, well, we kind of contacted TLO and we said, okay, we want to play a Protoss professional gamer, ideally, you know, in the top 10 range of Protoss. And, you know, as you might guess, because it's actually one of his teammates, he recommended that we play Liquid Mana.
All right. Well, I think it's time for us to learn about Liquid Mana. Thank you so much, TLO, for your participation here. It was fantastic. And let's go ahead and learn about Liquid Mana.
Mana can also go to the low ground. Oh, Kevin, I can't believe it. He's pulled it off. 3 Phoenix, 5 Stalkers, and 2 Adepts. Mana wants to go through to that round of 8. There is simply no units here for Neep, and our Polish Protoss has done it.
Liquid's Mana is just like TLO, an absolute veteran within the StarCraft 2 scene, but also a very, very successful actual Protoss player. Had a lot of success in the beginning of his career. He won some of the biggest tournaments around back then, 2011, 2012, but he even comes off a very good 2018, where I think in the summer he had his biggest success of the year, where he took a 2nd place at a big tournament, as we call WCS Austin. That's just less than half a year ago, so Mana is absolutely a top Protoss.
Yes, indeed he is. I'm so excited to watch those replays. Mana, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got here? What was this like for you to meet up with DeepMind?
So I know very, very little about DeepMind, and Tilo was approaching me from time to time. Hey, like, how do you play PvP? You know, so I was getting curious about that. So he told me that he's going to play against DeepMind because it's only a Protoss versus Protoss player. So he was trying to learn a little bit from my side, as I'm a professional Protoss player. And then shortly before Christmas, he messaged me, "Hey, do you want to come to an event somewhere around Europe? Like like I didn't know exactly what this is going to be about. So I'm like, yeah, but it's just like around Christmas, so I need more details about that, right? So I think it wasn't a day that TLO told me that this is going to be a DeepMind show match, and then very shortly after a couple of emails exchanged, and I was introduced to DeepMind team. They took a very good care of me, and yeah, I arrived in London to play a couple of matches against the AlphaStar.
Well, that is excellent. You guys said that you immediately put the AlphaStar back into training mode after you had a couple drinks and decided on this plan. Can you tell us kind of like how much learning did it do? How long was that exactly?
That's right. So one of the obvious things is that Mana, as his main race, is much better than TLO at Protoss. Probably he would win definitely more than 90% of games in PvP. So that's definitely a step up in difficulty. Now, that being said, we trained the agents for about a week, which was kind of the delay between the two matches. And, during that week, agents also became stronger. It's a bit difficult for us to estimate how much stronger. We don't, we cannot be playing professionals all the time. We can only estimate their relative win rates against other agents. The agents looked like they learned to beat the previous sort of iteration that played TLO. And honestly, that I was super excited to see what was going to happen, because this was really it. Mm-hmm. This is a top professional player. I was actually having dinner with Mana, and he told me that he had played StarCraft since he was 5. I mean, I'm sure not professionally. Then I thought to myself, well, 20 years versus, it's not as fair as
200 years,
yes,
or
but it's clearly he dedicated a lot of time to study the race, mm-hmm. the game. So we were very much looking forward to playing against him.
So, Mana, what were your expectations as you came towards this match? Like, how much did you know? What were you thinking? Were you confident? Tell us about that a bit.
TLO didn't want to spoil anything, of course, so I got very, very little knowledge. All I knew is that TLO lost, but I didn't know if it was 0-5, 1-4, 2-3, I don't know how many games he played, so I only know he lost. So I was like, if TLO lost, like I can't lose as well, all right? So I was in a position that I was feeling confident. I wanted to defend the humanity, so I was feeling very confident going into this.
Okay, and you guys, I know that you already kind of mentioned that you're really not sure as it trains up, like is it going to be that much better that it can beat Mana? But did you have maybe like a gut feeling as to how this might go?
So maybe you go first.
So I guess it's when you're actually trying to watch an AI train, you have to evaluate it yourselves to try and get some sense of how it will do. But of course, you never really know from that evaluation how that will transfer into the real world against top pro players. Mm-hmm. So we'd seen that, of course, these agents had been training as kind of sparring partners against all of the different agents in the AlphaStar League that had played against TLO. And we'd seen that they'd learned to defeat and outwit a lot of those strategies. But that doesn't mean that they had seen every kind of strategy that there is out there, and we knew that there was a good chance that there would be big holes in its strategy space. And so really the only way to know for sure was to play the game. Did we have a gut feeling? I think we would honestly say that we really didn't know. It was a scary moment. Yeah,
I'm more a pessimist. I definitely thought, well, this is a much step up. I again was hoping for some good games, mm-hmm. but I had very little sort of confidence in winning the series. But it was still like an exciting time. Again, after a week of an exciting time against TLO, we were already excited in the same room with the team to just enjoy some StarCraft games in the end, right?
Yeah. I'm very excited to see how a professional Protoss player is going to take on DeepMind here. We're going to end up watching 3 of the replays of your 5-game series. It's going to be games 1, 3, and 4. I do want to mention once again, we are going to have a live exhibition match after all of these replays that we're going through. And of course, all replays will be put on the DeepMind website at the end. So thank you guys. It is time. Let's go into game number 1 of Mana against AlphaStar.
Incredibly excited for this then. I mean, obviously I think the previous series comes as a little bit of a shock to us as well. I did not expect I did not expect that. But I mean, when we are analyzing StarCraft 2 the way we normally do, clearly the AlphaStar played pretty well. But if this would be the same agent, which is not, I mean, we've just learned that this one was later, this one has obviously more games. But normally you would say that Mana should absolutely be able to take care of the previous one. Of the one that TLO played, I would absolutely believe that Mana can take care of that AlphaStar.
Yeah, it felt kind of like you could see a lot of the fundamentals of TLO, no matter what race he plays, are going to be very strong. But some of the very specific counters Mana, I think, would have done better. Now,
like, I believe that when it comes to the opening, we already went over the openings a little bit in Protoss versus Protoss. But once again, I believe that there is a much harder way to punish the fact that AlphaStar is not walling off than TLO did. TLO got off to a reasonable start. I believe a player like Mana can punish this a lot harder, unless AlphaStar would have the absolute perfect defense, which you could say is maybe a Phoenix, an Adept, and a Shield Battery.
Okay.
But we haven't seen that yet. So I'm actually very curious to see how this plays out.
Mana might not realize that this is kind of the way that AlphaStar has been playing so far. We should mention AlphaStar is in the top left as the blue Protoss player, and Liquid Mana is in the bottom right as the red Protoss player. One thing I did notice that was kind of interesting is AlphaStar immediately hooked to the side with his initial probe sent out to scout the map and see what his opponent was doing. And that's normally what you do to scout proxy buildings that are aggressive.
Yep, but TLO also said that it felt it didn't scout perfectly. If you take a look at the mini-map, you can sort of see the path that the probe of AlphaStar took, so it scouted a little bit.
Yes.
But what would happen if a Stargate or a gateway would be a little bit further to the left? That could definitely make things pretty complicated. Liquid Mana is going for the 2 Adepts, like TLO went for in the very first game that we saw as well. And normally, this is cute. All right, talking about proxies.
Yes, yes.
But normally you would say that the 2 Adepts of Mana should be able to get quite a bit of damage done in the main base of AlphaStar.
This is what I would expect. Now, both sides of this look pretty normal so far. Proxying, you know, putting buildings near your opponent's base in Protoss versus Protoss is a pretty common strategy. And we see AlphaStar is doing that. It will probably be a Stargate. If it was a human, it would definitely be. Mana is going for a Stargate of his own in the main base. So this is very, very standard, of course, as Mana is a top player.
A gateway is not very uncommon either. This is something that is pretty familiar at very high level play as well. Building the gateway on the other side of the map. Ooh, is that 2 extra gateways? Okay, that's not something we see super often anymore. But a good old 4-gate. I think this was the very first strategy we had in StarCraft 2.
Yes.
And it's been pretty strong and scary ever since.
Okay, the 2 Adepts get into the main base of AlphaStar. And AlphaStar is actually losing a fair amount of probes so far. Is that 3 or 4 probes already going down?
Take a look at it.
Oh, 5. Well, one was the scout as well. So this is kind of a funny thing about AlphaStar, though, is that AlphaStar always overmakes probes. So the economy is not actually that bad.
No, but normally building 2 gateways on the other side of the map and it being scouted, this means that you are pretty committed to this build, as we like to call in StarCraft 2. This is not something where you can just stop your plan and immediately do the complete opposite, because you've sank a lot of resources into going for this strategy. If there's one thing that really stands out of the last game we saw of AlphaStar versus TLO, is that AlphaStar doesn't seem to fear ramps very much.
No.
Even though that's something that we do.
That's true, yeah.
We are very worried about going up ramps. In StarCraft 2, there is no high ground vision, as we like to call. So the units on the low ground cannot see what is on top of a ramp unless you commit to it.
Yeah, they're just going to take free hits, and you can see those health bars going down for AlphaStar's Stalkers. Now, AlphaStar does have way more Stalkers here than Liquid Mana does, but with those shield batteries to heal them up a little bit, maybe Mana can hold on.
Force field is a little bit late on the side of Mana, but it's still pretty good as it splits this army in half. At the same time, an Oracle does go to town on all these workers on the left top side of the map, and it really, I think here you can see the difference. Ooh, okay, well that's actually a little bit scarier for Mana. A lot of these Stalkers entering the main base.
Well, this is not over yet. The Immortal pops out, but instantly targeted here by AlphaStar. Wow. Oh my gosh, AlphaStar could have enough units here to actually win this game.
The micro is really good so far. It's important that your Stalkers, the units from AlphaStar here, don't get surrounded by these probes, because Stalkers are very good. They're fast and mobile, but they're not very strong. They're not very tanky, so they can take too many hits. But this micro is very solid so far, and where things look perfect for Mana, it actually seems like AlphaStar is taking this first.
Well, you know, we would normally see Mana win a position like this, but the micro overall, this control of these Stalkers has been fantastic. AlphaStar is just playing really, really well here.
And once again, showing no respect to the ramp. Just walking into a Protoss main base, this is not something we see super often at high-level Protoss versus Protoss play, because we saw 1 sentry, but normally you would see multiple sentries, and if they keep force-fielding, you cannot enter the main base.
Okay, so GG is called, and AlphaStar actually pulls it out. Mana, I need to hear what you're thinking here, because That looked scary.
Yeah, you explained it perfectly. AlphaStar, like, he's not scared about the ramp. So if I would be playing against a human player right there, nobody's going up that ramp, especially after I scouted the 4-gate like twice. Yeah. So I was just confirming it. I was like, yeah, that's a very typical strategy. I can do it. So I just go with the Oracle on the other side of the map. I do a lot of damage, and I feel safe in my ramp.
Yeah.
But then, like, one of my gateways was not being a warp gate, so my sentry was late. So he kept trading and like draining the energy of the shield batteries, and then he had so many stalkers still as a follow-up. I was really, really shocked. So it was a game that I think I could have won if I did just a few minor things better.
Mm-hmm. It was a very close game indeed, and I actually thought you were going to win it for a bit, as Roddy did as well. Now, we're not going to show Game 2 really in its entirety, but can you just tell us briefly what Game 2 was like?
Mm-hmm. Surprisingly, we both went for mirror builds. That means that me and AlphaStar went for the exact same build order. We went with a Stargate. It was a rather short game. We both went with like a gateway heavy style with Phoenixes. We were kind of fighting in the middle of the map, but with the superior micro of AlphaStar, I went a little bit behind. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to go for an all-in strategy. I didn't want to go for a later game because I knew I was in a bad position. Mm-hmm. So I went to the offense, and surprisingly, AlphaStar simply had way more than I did. So as soon as he destroyed my army, he counterattacked and destroyed me. So it was 2-0.
Okay. AlphaStar playing pretty well so far.
What was the reaction of the team at this point, right? You guys are experiencing these games. Like, I would love to know what's going on. Well, super, like, relief as well in terms of, well, it was actually better than the previous week's agents. As Dave said, it's a bit of an uncertainty for us. It's really, really important for us to have such talented players come in and test the agents. It is obviously... people have really perfected playing StarCraft. It's such a long-standing playing game. So it's very, very important for us to not only just have agents that seem to play good, but also to verify that against these amazing players that we got super lucky to get in our offices. I mean, that also was super cool to have these guys around. And the team was also super excited to meet them. Some of them are, they're fanboys, right? So.
I would just add that, of course, AlphaStar is a team effort, and it took quite a number of people, a lot of effort to actually get to this point where we're able to play matches against amazing people like TLO and Mana. And, the team really just had this immense respect for the situation, and we're loving every moment of seeing this matchup. And there was not just relief, but also we had, a really celebratory atmosphere in the room. We were all sitting there together, like, tense as anything watching this game. And then at the GG, I think there was a little bit of a moment of excitement, and the team was
can I add something? After game number 1 and game number 2, they were literally in the room next to me, so I could see like, wow, just behind the wall. So I knew they were cheering hard for AlphaStar.
No doubt. Definitely the hard work paying off so far with a 7-0 map score. Now, going back to just game 2 for a second, I understand that we have some video footage of it, which you guys are actually going to walk us through and kind of show us how AlphaStar knows what to do within the game. So if you guys could tell us a bit about that.
Yes, so once the video roll in, I can kind of a bit of unpack it for you guys, perhaps. So this is a very nice visualization also prepared by the team after the matches, which essentially shows quite a few things. So here, starting on the top left, we see AlphaStar view. The game as it's focusing its attention on this area of the map. As Dave said, we don't have the notion of a camera, but it kind of focuses wherever you're seeing that screen on. And importantly and interestingly, AlphaStar observes or perceives the game only when it wants to act. So this arrow that appears and disappears, it means when it appears, it means now it's actually looking at what's going on. Then this kind of observation goes into what we call neural network. I must say these words here for kind of the machine learning people out there. These 3 sort of spheres that are kind of changing in color is actually what we call an LSTM, but let's not talk about that in the stream perhaps. So this is kind of a bit of the brain of AlphaStar, and it's what kind of it's deciding what to do. So after that, the arrow goes into kind of an important area of the screen, which is what actions should I take, right? The first, injecting the observations, thinking a little bit of the situation, and then we see kind of important points here. First is
what should you do? What action should you do? There are many actions in StarCraft. So we see, for instance, what buildings does it want to do? What units does it want to create? And that's kind of the little balls we see here on the bottom right. And also we see which locations it's considering issuing this action, right? So it's building a new unit, it's moving its kind of set of units around, and we can see kind of where it thinks it should be moving next. And last but not least is the outcome prediction, right? So AlphaStar requires to kind of gauge itself whether it's ahead or not. At this point in the game, clearly it thinks it's ahead. It's really confident it's going to win. And if we analyze this game in terms of supply and how much units and economy, we would understand that AlphaStar here is actually ahead, although the game is not over. So that outcome prediction is kind of also a testament of like what is the agent perceiving the game. Should it push forward? Should it retreat? Those decisions are so critical and so difficult to make as a pro. As you know, going back and forth, should you engage or not? These are actually what makes StarCraft a very hard challenge for AI. Because how are you going to hardcode rules that encode whether you should go up the ramp or not, as you were saying, right? So the solution we adopted is to not hardcode any rule at all. We let sort of this whole system that they've described learn by itself what is it going to be that AlphaStar should be doing at all times. So this is a bit of unpacking. We will obviously have these and more details later on today, but I mean, this is a kind of a cool way to see StarCraft. Yeah. I'm pretty sure you guys have not seen this before.
I love it. No. That outcome prediction is, oh my gosh, I'm getting chills right now. This is just so cool. Wow. So, after these games, Mana, yes, AlphaStar is up 2-0 against you, but it doesn't feel like these games were completely unwinnable for you, especially game number 1. Mm-hmm. As we were kind of going towards game number 3 here, were you losing hope? Did you have a new strategy, a new plan?
I was feeling more nervous than before. Obviously, I was very confident going into this. I lost game number 1. Let's say luckily or unluckily. It was a game that I could have won normally if it was a human player. Game number 2 was, I must say, it was a disaster for me. He dominated. I mean, the AlphaStar dominated me. Mm-hmm. And going into game 3, I was like, yep, this is the time that I need to turn it around.
Okay. Well, I want to see if you turn it around, and I think the people at home do too. So let's go into game number 3 and see if Mana can do it. Can he pick up a map?
I must say, we didn't see everything there of game 2, but I do totally agree with everything that Mana said. Game 2 looked very solid, and if you would go up against that, I think that's where it indeed starts getting really scary. I agree with Mana's assessment of game 1, and we are not saying this. A lot of people often think about StarCraft well, just because you say it doesn't work doesn't mean it shouldn't work. It clearly did, so it was the right thing to do. I don't think that's how StarCraft 2 works. Just, sometimes you can have a good outcome, but it doesn't necessarily mean it was the right play. And there are moments where you clearly shouldn't run up ramps because, that's you're giving away half your army more often than not, and you're putting kind of the ball in your opponent's corner, right? It's not even about you making a good move. You're only relying on your opponent not making the correct play. And I feel that's kind of what happened in game 1. Game 2, we didn't see everything, but what I saw from those clips there, that looked a lot more solid and definitely a lot more intimidating to go up against.
I can already tell just with the way that AlphaStar has been moving in the games against Mana that it's quite a bit stronger than the agents that went against TLO. So, this is very exciting to see. Now,
look at this.
AlphaStar is for the first time making that wall that we've been talking about. This is the normal standard for human players.
That's actually super interesting because despite the fact that in game 1 it didn't wall off and it still won, it seems like perhaps that's an adjustment that at least this agent felt like it should have made.
All right. So far,
that's really cool to see, by the way, that this is the first time we see this after all these games. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, in the middle of this 5-game series, there is a wall off.
Yeah, so what will be interesting here, part of the reason why you make that wall off is so that you can clog it. You can build a building there that's very hard to kill, and it will stop any units from coming up and trying to attack your probes. So are we actually going to see AlphaStar utilize that technique, or is the wall just a fancy paperweight?
Well, Mana, after scouting the opening of AlphaStar this game, decides not to go for the 2 Adepts. When it comes to Protoss openings, there is no such thing as an absolute best opening. A lot of pros will like the opening that Mana is going for here, which consists of 1 Stalker and 1 Sentry. Stalkers are strong defensively, Sentries as well, and Sentries also allow you to scout a little bit what's happening on the other side of the map. The 2 Adepts is a perfect opening if your opponent has no wall off. But since Mana scouted that the AlphaStar actually did go for a potential wall off at least, because the gateways are near the ramp, I think Mana's opening makes a lot of sense, and yeah, this is all very normal.
Now, Stalkers being made on both sides. Again, pretty normal stuff. If you showed me this replay just randomly last week, I would have told you that I'm watching 2 humans play each other. And Mana going to go ahead and expand first. Now, when is AlphaStar going to do this? Each game so far, AlphaStar has been pretty slow on that, but continually making those probes. As you can see, 21 in that main base so far.
But a 303 Nexus, as we're just taking a look at the game clock real quick, this is not weird. And especially in this patch, because this was played on the BlizzCon patch, the patch that we had the World Championship Finals on just a couple months ago. This was very standard expand timing. Like, this is as normal as it gets. And even when it comes to the probe movement, even when it came to the gas saturation, I can see a very big difference between this AlphaStar and the one we saw 3 games ago.
No, you're certainly right about that. Now, some really nice micromanagement coming in from AlphaStar, forcing back, 3 Stalkers versus 3 Stalkers. Whoever can control better is going to take that advantage, and we see AlphaStar gets it.
I feel like Mana is trying to get these Stalkers up the ramp, since AlphaStar has not shown a lot of fear up to this point, but this time AlphaStar is not committing going up the ramp, and the micro, I mean, the
really
micro
good
on these Stalkers is incredibly effective.
Really, really good. That is top tier micro right there, pulling back the very injured Stalkers with almost no health.
And look, it shows respect for the ramp this time.
Yeah, it's being a bit more careful. Mana is hitting the force field, but does Mana actually just lose the Nexus from here?
But, I mean, if we would normally see this, we would go up to the point where whether or not the Nexus goes down, at this point doesn't matter that much, because AlphaStar actually has a very strong build order on the other side of the map as well. It's following up with Phoenixes. I mean, it's nice to see that AlphaStar, after 200 years of practice, came up with the conclusion that Phoenixes are awesome.
Yes.
I agree then.
All right. Well, Mana gets out the Immortal. Mana also showing very expert professional micro here. Mana was poking down, trying to push those Stalkers back, threatening damage on them. So he actually saved his expansion, and he's got some strong tech. Yeah, it's not the Phoenix, but Immortals are very, very strong against Stalkers.
Yep. Phoenix could potentially lift this Immortal, temporarily disable it to not let it participate in the battle, and then at that point AlphaStar's army would be a tiny bit stronger once again. But it is hard to be this aggressive in a Protoss versus Protoss for this long, especially this early on into the game, if there is no way for you to have quick reinforcements. There is no Warp Prism, there is no pylon on the other side of the map, so these are attacks where we would normally say like, it seems hard to really get a lot done here.
Yeah, but as you said, with those Phoenixes out, they can disable some of these really strong units, so I'm not like completely on Team Mana here as far as who's winning, even though it feels like this is really anyone's game right now.
I'm definitely with you. I just didn't think there was a lot to accomplish there, but it seems like AlphaStar felt the exact same way, because it didn't commit to anything. It didn't throw away units. It didn't go for a fight that was not winnable. This is, this is almost like went ahead, get further ahead, and just played very safe and steady.
The one thing that's a little bit odd, I feel like, from AlphaStar, just lots and lots of Stalkers and non-stop Phoenix production. It's not that bizarre, but you're playing against Immortals, so you could get a little bit nervous that those Immortals will really punish your Stalker count.
That's very dangerous Stalker movement there. Those Sentries would have been a tiny bit closer. AlphaStar could have lost a lot of units there. Force field does go down. The Phoenix is trying to get that Warp Prism, and it's something we see in professional soccer play very often.
Yeah. And some good micro. AlphaStar actually giving up on it because Mana pulled back the Warp Prism quickly enough that would have been like an overcommitment of the Phoenixes.
I mean, we didn't see everything of Game 2, but the clips that we did see, I mean, I was kind of focused on the outcome prediction because I think that was super awesome and interesting, but you could see that the Phoenix micro was, that's something else. That's
really good.
Yeah, that's incredibly good.
And now a second Stargate. That's a bit uncommon in this type of situation. Like, the Phoenixes are good here, but you don't feel like they're that good that you want 2 Stargates making them.
I feel like this AlphaStar is showing a lot more respect for force fields and ramps and movement in general.
Well, it comes in, and this is the big battle right now. Mana is going in, trying to get a kill here. The Phoenix is just lifting very important units, picking some of them off, taking them out of this battle, and Mana actually has to recall what he has left over. AlphaStar's decision-making so far in this game has actually been fantastic, only taking engagements when it knows it can win.
Also, lifting the sentries there is the absolute right play. Sentries don't have a lot of hit points, but do take extra damage from these Phoenixes. So that's the first unit you want to take out. And at this point, I think AlphaStar realizes that it's at so many units that it can just start lifting all the units of Mana on the other side of the map.
And definitely a bit of miss micro there as AlphaStar comes forward, but I don't think it matters. This is just too big of an army.
Phoenixes are very, very good units.
Yeah, this has been a fantastic game from AlphaStar so far. It looks like, you know, the game 2 looked very strong, but this game overall, it was like not exactly human play, but a lot of respect, fantastic control on the units, good moves running away, and Mana has to GG here. And, I mean, it's going to be a full 5 games, but you've lost 3 in a row now. What are you thinking at this point?
So Game 2 and Game 3 were quite similar. It was a Phoenix control that really carried AlphaStar to the victory in these games. So in Game 4, I am expecting to just move away from the Stargate and Phoenixes, because in Game 2, I went with the Phoenixes myself. Game 3, I wanted to kind of counter the Phoenix, even though the early game micro was heavily in favor of AlphaStar. So Game 4, I'm trying to simply survive.
Okay. It's fair enough. I can't fault you for this. Now, the DeepMind team at this point, I mean, there's a variety of strategies. It seems like the decision-making is getting better. It doesn't look exactly like human play, but I guess the decision-making is what's starting to really blow me away. Yeah, the micromanagement is great, but some of these retreats, it's like going in with the Phoenixes and then withdrawing after taking a bunch of damage, not sacrificing any extra units. What were you guys thinking at this point?
Yeah, so I think what you say is great. The decision making, the kind of high level decision making of AlphaStar is really spot on. I did a bit of a project back in 2010 to try to build an agent or a bot that would try to understand when to engage, when to disengage, and it's extremely difficult to come up with all the situations you could be in. And in here we're seeing just that how this neural network is deciding that. And it's doing quite a good job at this. And of course, after seeing the game, kind of the 3-0 at this point, well, we were quite cheerful and happy. And one thing to note that you perhaps noted here is that these games, in terms of style of AlphaStar, they start to look slightly more alike, even though these are different agents. They might discover a meta of like maybe Phoenix Stalker expansion, and this kind of play is not optimal, but it's kind of a very good, kind of solid way to play the game.
Yeah. Now, talking about AlphaStar, like, where do you guys run AlphaStar from? Is this in a data center? Is it on a computer? What exactly is the force behind this that's destroying Mana right now?
Right. So the actual games we're seeing, when AlphaStar is already trained and it's just playing against us, that is actually run on a extremely normal, like a commodity desktop that just has a GPU just that you can just go buy on a store. So the actual that little brain we saw is just done on a single GPU, and AlphaStar takes about maybe 50 milliseconds to compute from observing the game to actually issuing an action. So it's fairly modest in terms of what we call inference or play time.
And then in terms of actually training, we actually use what's called tensor processing units, which live in the Google Cloud. And the agents in the AlphaStar League actually use 16 of these tensor processing units. Now, I know many people won't know what these things are, so just to bring that down to earth a little bit, that would be something like having, say, 50 GPUs, which you might have on a kind of a decent desktop computer, and being able to actually use those for training one of these agents in the AlphaStar League.
Okay, very cool stuff. I'm excited to see game number 4 here, where Mana is going to try to stay alive. So,
I have a quick question. Just like TLO mentioned, he played against 5 different agents, or at least you guys let him know later on. Is the same case here for Mana? Did Mana also play against 5 different agents?
It's the same case, and I mean he actually asked, and we told him there might be different agents.
Okay.
And of course it's kind of common for players to also look at replays of what they just played. So they ask if they could do that, and we let them do that. Just maybe they can spot some deficiency and so on, right? So I would say, especially for Mana, he asked. We just told him, right?
Okay, that is awesome.
And one of the nice things actually was that the AlphaStar League, as it develops, you start to see quite a wide variety of different kind of macro strategic ideas coming into play. But what happens is at the end of the league, we use this idea that we actually find this set of 5 that works best together to be kind of hard to exploit by the opponent. And that's one of the core ideas behind this new algorithm.
Before going into this series against Mana, did you guys have any idea which of the 5 agents was the strongest? Like, did you guys know that Agent 2 or 3 was stronger than Agent 1, for instance?
I mean, I'm not sure strong. It's very hard to know.
Okay.
We did play the agents, but I mean, obviously we're not very strong players. I did have favorites, and I think everyone kind of, and obviously each member of the team, might be training or the kind of developing, their kind of idea and so on. So sometimes, but at the end of the day, yeah, like I just have favorites in terms of how they play the game. But which is stronger is very hard to tell, actually.
Okay.
I don't know if they've had a favorite.
I mean, I'm really hoping to hear what you guys think, really. We'd be fascinated to know. We're not strong enough to have those opinions, and this is why it's so wonderful having you guys here to really tell us what's going on.
Indeed.
I mean, my mind is all over the place because after game 1, I was still absolutely not convinced. I believe that if you put Mana in that position 100 times again, he's going to win 99 out of 100 times. After game 2 and game 3, yeah, I almost have nothing to say because that looked very, very good, and that looked like something very intimidating to go up against.
Well, maybe after we go through all the games, Mana can tell us which one was the strongest one and if this is going to influence him in the future. So let's go ahead and get into that game number 4 out of 5 here and check out how Mana does.
All right. I'm pretty intimidated at this point.
Yes. I am as well, and as Mana was saying, he's trying to survive at this point. Mana is the red Protoss in the bottom right here that you see. And in the top left, we have AlphaStar.
This agent of AlphaStar decides not to go for the wall-off. So we saw the agent in the previous game, or AlphaStar in the previous game, did actually go for the wall-off. Once again, we still have agreed as a StarCraft 2 community that walling off is the optimal way to play StarCraft 2, unless you are 100% convinced that you have the right answer for a potential first 2 adepts. So I'm really curious to see if Mana scouted. I think Mana has scouted every single game up to this point, and if he once again, realizes that this is a no wall-off opening, if he decides to go for the adepts again and perhaps get even more damage done than before.
Yeah, possibly that'll be something we'll see. But the counter so far against that, because we have seen, TLO is killing quite a few probes, and we've seen Mana do some damage as well to that economy. AlphaStar just kind of makes a lot of probes to make up for that.
Of course, adepts are not free, and that is, logic that some players have applied over the last few years of PvP, where it's like, well, I'm actually okay with losing 2 or 3 workers if I am able to pick off 2 adepts, because that often also means that the person that didn't go for the wall-off maybe opened up with Stalkers, and if you open up with Stalkers, then you will have a army advantage over your opponent. So that is logic that we have applied as well. Just in general, most pros have come to the conclusion that losing workers this early into the game is not optimal.
Yeah, that's like a very long-standing thing that is believed about StarCraft. StarCraft's been out for over 20 years now, and that is one of the basic tenets. Don't lose your workers early on. They are very important in building up that economy.
But Mana also mentioned that he was obviously a little shaken up after these first 3 games and felt that maybe being aggressive or going for Stargates doesn't seem like the right way. Now, if you want to play defensive, normally you don't open up Adepts, because Adepts have one purpose, and that is in general to be aggressive on the other side of the map. This time it's actually AlphaStar opening up with the Adepts, while Mana is indeed sticking to what he just said on the desk, where he favors defensive, strong play, and Stalkers, they suit that a little bit better.
Yeah, and even puts that pylon on the high ground. So it seems like Mana is going to be very careful about expanding that's placed there, so he can probably put a shield battery down and have that kind of defender's advantage if he gets attacked again by AlphaStar, because, AlphaStar definitely has been attacking pretty early and pretty often so far.
So Mana avoids the 2 Adepts of AlphaStar, and he's going to be able to get his probe into the main base of AlphaStar. Curious to see where these Adepts will end up. I'm even like, I'm just generally curious to see how the adept movement is going to be. Okay, so the shading goes rather defensive, rather than committing with the shades forward and going to your enemy's base as quickly as possible. You can see that officer there is kind of trying to preserve its adepts.
There's a little trend that I've seen from the agents. I know that every agent that we've seen so... Oh, that was a very good recall by AlphaStar, actually. We haven't seen a move quite like that yet. We've seen recalls from the previous agents, but that was kind of a very clutch one where you're going to lose an adept, maybe 2 adepts in that situation.
I think one thing we do really still have to point out then is that if you're asking me what is the one big difference that AlphaStar is doing that almost no other professional StarCraft 2 player does, is the amount of workers that is being produced on one base. You take a look at this mineral line, and once again, you are technically mining more minerals, you know, up to 24. You like going over 24 is 100% pointless, but in general, going from, you know, above 16, there's just very slow progression, and we have decided as community that you really don't want to go over 16 too much. Maybe 18 is acceptable, but normally you don't see 24 workers on one base. That is one thing that truly stands out for me.
Well, with this Oracle from Mana flying in right now and getting a decent amount of probes that get pulled very, very quickly, I guess that AlphaStar is going to be happy once again that it has these extra probes, so its economy won't be completely destroyed. And another thing I want to point out here, Roddy, that we've seen in these games is quite often there will be probes that are off minerals, like with the stalkers chasing down units or kind of running around chasing probes. So there are certain ways in which AlphaStar is utilizing these extra probes that we never see because no one makes these many on so few bases.
But I do like, as the moment that this second base finished up, that you immediately see those workers being transferred. So AlphaStar is clearly aware of the fact that having 24 workers on one base is not optimal. It just likes having them early, which is, you know, that is a theory that we're all familiar with. It's just in general, we prefer expanding earlier and getting those workers later, while AlphaStar seems to be doing it the other way around.
Yeah, right now, you know, Mana is looking pretty strong overall, I would say. AlphaStar going into that Twilight tech. We would imagine that it is going to be the blink upgrade for these stalkers so that they become very easy to micro, very powerful in that regard. But Mana, I feel like, is in a good spot with these oracles flying around, trying to get some probes, getting the information, and making Immortals at home, which are going to do really, really well against this high stalker count.
But I must say I'm loving the stalker positioning there by AlphaStar. The way that these stalkers were spread out in the natural, the second base of AlphaStar, that just made it very hard for these oracles to come in and get damage done.
That's something that during the TLO match that we were talking about, where AlphaStar is keeping the entire army together and not spreading. Now, once you start to see really high-end pros play, they will split their army up like this and defend multiple locations and only bring it together when it's truly needed.
You know, the level of this AlphaStar is a lot higher than what we saw in our first broadcasted series. That is, I think, very, very obvious in so many ways.
Now, that blink upgrade is on the way for AlphaStar. It seems still like a very, very close game. Mana is going for the Bay, the Robo Bay, to increase that tech a little bit, and as second robotics.
Yep. On paper, you do normally like this for Mana, because the army, he's working towards a stronger army. These Stalkers are very strong units defensively. They're really good in protecting the mineral line, for instance, so to make sure that these probes will not fall against the Oracle. But eventually, we like to say that Stalkers do start falling off a little bit. They have a lot of micro potential. They have a lot of... They're very fast units, so there is, you know, a high mobility factor that you can really make plays happen. But they are units where you need to make plays happen, because in a big straight stand-up fight, they are inferior units to, for instance, Immortals.
Yeah, there's a lot of units in StarCraft 2 where they're very strong early on, and then as you get later and you get higher tech units out to kind of counter them more strongly, they lose that power, and you almost get punished for overmaking them early on. Now, is that going to happen in this game? So far, looking at the compositions that these two are making, I really feel like there is an advantage here for Mana.
This is perhaps the most interesting game that we've seen so far, because I agree with you that Composition-wise, there's absolutely an advantage for Mana, but you can also say that the ball is in the corner of AlphaStar. AlphaStar needs to make plays happen, but if there's one unit in Protoss versus Protoss where you can say you can get value out of them, even though you've made a lot of them early on, it is in general the Stalker. Now, 29 Stalkers don't want to fight this straight up. There is a shield battery, there are immortals, there are stasis traps that will freeze those units, but let's see if there is some potential here.
Yeah, there's so many Stalkers out. 30 is a number beyond anything that we really ever see. Now, Mana is kind of zoning them out with that powerful Disruptor. Here, AlphaStar comes trying to target down some of these important units and actually picks off the Disruptor, so that was pretty strong and some fantastic micro blinking back.
Okay, this micro is starting to get a little bit ridiculous. No, I don't think a single Stalker went down up to this point. Okay, there we go.
Okay, losing a few of them here and starting to pick off some of the Immortals. Now, a Stasis Ward gets tripped, so that's definitely going to help Mana a little bit.
Yeah, these Immortals are starting to do serious work.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we went over. In a straight-up fight, Immortals are simply quite a bit stronger than Stalkers, but AlphaStar was displaying some phenomenal micro there. Being able to keep these Stalkers alive. Oh my goodness, this Stalker count is out of control. How many Stalkers is that?
Now, it is 32, so we have even more than AlphaStar started with, but 6 Immortals and shield batteries and stasis wards should be able to hold on at this point.
No amount of micros should be able to save you here. I do love that AlphaStar is transitioning during all of this. Wow, I love actually. So there are a couple of tricks that we use in Protoss versus Protoss. Without getting too technical here, Immortals have a barrier that can absorb quite a bit of damage. Now what pro players like to do is target the Immortal with just one unit. You can see a barrier go off, and then you use the rest of your army to gun this Immortal down. AlphaStar is using this trick over and over and over again.
It is fantastic micro. Now, we should point out that Mana just warped in Dark Templars. These are invisible unless you have a cannon, possibly an Oracle. It has a spell that can see them, or one of those observers that we saw in one of the earlier Agents matches. So, do we actually have that? There is an observer on the way right now for AlphaStar.
I believe we saw a cannon somewhere as well, but I'm not 100% positive about that. There is a cannon all the way in the back. Mana is actually targeting the robotics facility here.
Yeah, it's not a bad move. Okay, so once again goes in. These Stalkers are getting softened up. You can see on those health bars, a lot of them have taken quite a bit of damage.
After these Dark Templars actually got recalled there by Mana. We can see these Immortals are starting to do some very serious work here. Stalkers have micro potential, but the damage output of 5 or 6 of these Immortals from Mana, that's simply too high, and no amount of micro can save you in these kind of fights.
And now that he has these Dark Templars at home, you know, making an Archon, Mana is playing an extremely intelligent game right now. I'm very impressed with the control of AlphaStar, the fact that AlphaStar has taken a third base and gotten the Observer out in time to not die to the Dark Templars, but Mana's looking pretty scary here as well.
Can we take a look? Is there a charge on the side of AlphaStar?
I don't think so.
Yes,
oh, there is. Okay.
There is already. Now, this army of Mana is very powerful, and the Immortals will always take care of Stalkers. But if AlphaStar would be able to perhaps buy some more time for itself, there is a chance that, you know, 20 Zealots can show up, and then 20 Zealots can surround his army, because AlphaStar is a base ahead.
Yeah. Now, these trades, though, seem to be going extremely well for Mana. But we keep seeing AlphaStar do that trick that you're talking about. Hit the barriers on the Immortals and then blink away. Not that much damage on these Stalkers. I feel like most pros would have lost all these Stalkers by now.
Multiple groups of Stalkers being controlled here as well. Look at the Oracle. There are Stalkers everywhere. I think at this point, Mana is also wondering, okay, what am I going up against? Because this is... I mean, not even the best Protoss players can often pull off movement like this.
You're really quite right about that.
Oh, the Warp Prism.
Oh, that was a great pickoff right there. And getting the Disruptor as well. Oh my gosh, AlphaStar with the pure Stalker strategy.
This is insane control, though. Multiple armies being controlled. All the Immortals went down. And now it's just a couple of Zealots. And obviously Stalkers are fat. Well, there are still a couple of Immortals on the north side, but it's incredibly difficult to do this in a game of StarCraft 2, where you micro units on the south side of your screen, but at the same time you also have to do it on the north side.
And you know what's really kind of shocking about this is we went over the APM, the actions per minute, and it's not really that high. It's an acceptable pro level of speed coming out of AlphaStar. It's just the decision making of which stalkers to grab and pull back, it's just so nice.
Yeah, no, this is phenomenal unit control. This is not something we see very often.
No.
The stalkers coming in from multiple angles as well. A forward blink at this point, AlphaStar. Yeah, this is pretty insane stalker play then.
That is just unbelievable. Like Mana has made so many Immortals this game, I can't even count how high. And the fact that it has been defeated by literally pure Stalker, the unit that the Immortal most counters, it's so surprising. And GG is called by Mana there. And I tell you, you put out a wonderful game for Mana. It didn't work.
So I was very, very disappointed I lost this game because I thought I have everything that I need to defend this. Immortals, Oracles with Stasis, Shield Batteries, decent upgrades, but they could have been better. I had only +1 and very, very late charge. But like 8 Immortal versus Blink Stalkers?
Yeah.
Come on. If I play against any human player, they're not going to be microing these Stalkers that nicely. So the AlphaStar was trading very well in the beginning, but the more Immortals I got, the better it was for me. And then in the middle of the map, I was attacked at the north, I was attacked on the right side, on the bottom side. I can't see everything, right? So I was very, very surprised the way that AlphaStar decided to engage into my army, because my army in like a straight up engagement, no micro, wins 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So the way that AlphaStar microed was incredible.
And I really, just to emphasize something you said that's very interesting, right? So in the game you mentioned, well, the APMs actually do look reasonable, but not only the decision making. One thing that is very hard for us to also model is, well, not each action is created equal, right? So the precision of the actions of AlphaStar is indeed maybe perhaps one of the advantages, right? Like it's clicking not very fast, but each click, it kind of computes quite a bit, quite well what to do with that sort of action, right? And that's critical to see like amazing games like the one we just saw.
Yeah. That, I mean, I don't think we'll ever see another game like that, because as far as I'm concerned, there is not a pro in the world that can really control Stalkers in that way, with that type of precision and deciding all these different flanks to move in on. It was superhuman.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of fantastic Blink Stalker micro over the years, but then often it comes down to having an army on one side, and a lot of pros are excellent when it comes to controlling Stalkers, but that's focusing on one fight. What Mana said as well, in the middle of the map at one point there are Stalkers on the left top side, on the right top side, and on the south side. It technically is impossible to micro your Stalkers. You can't do that, because Immortals hit so hard that if you are even late for half a second, you end up losing 3-4 units very quickly, and that can be crucial in a game of StarCraft 2. Yeah, what we saw there, that's not human.
Yeah, it was amazing indeed. Now, we're not going to watch replay number 5 right now. Mana, can you kind of walk us through what happened in Game 5?
Yeah, so Game 5 was the most bizarre one out of the 5. So like versus TLO, you could see a couple of proxies, bizarre strategies, and in my games it was rather standard, very good play by AlphaStar. So in game number 5, AlphaStar decided to steal my gas. And I immediately recognized the decision that AlphaStar decided to steal my gas, and I immediately prevented it. So AlphaStar was a little bit confused, and at the very beginning of the game, he threw down a second pylon in my own base. So at this moment, I'm very, very confused, and on the other side of the map I'm scouting. I want to see what AlphaStar is doing. I see low ground buildings, gateway and a cyber core, not a 2-gate build, not a warp gate research. I am absolutely confused. So what AlphaStar does on the other side of the map, he proxies a robo and wins with a proxy immortal, but just barely, with an immortal surviving with a shield battery that was proxied as well. This is a game I definitely recommend to watch for people who understand StarCraft and how PvP works. So I lose the game number 5 as well, and I am 0-4.
Well, 0-5 at that point, right?
0-5, sorry, yes.
So, at this point now, AlphaStar, 10-0 against professional gamers. What is this experience like for you, Mana, to have gone through this and lost to such a variety of plays and strategies?
Yeah, so I was going confident into this match, right? I knew TLO lost. I didn't want to lose. I am a better Protoss player than TLO, of course. After losing 5-0, I have learned a little bit about PvP. The way that AlphaStar played the matchup was not that something I had any kind of experience with. It was very hard to judge whatever AlphaStar was doing, and it was different kind of StarCraft that I've ever played, and it was a great experience for me to learn something new from an AI.
That is just so fascinating. Now, what was your guys' impression having done this to Mana and TLO over the course of 2 weeks? I mean, that 1 week just improved your AI significantly, in our opinions. That looked much stronger than what TLO was going against, and just fantastic play. Can you kind of speak to that?
For me, honestly, the best part of it all, perhaps, is what just Mana said, that he learned something. He told us, well, I might try this, I might try that, because at the end of the day, playing against AI is great, but because of the way we train it to try to mimic human play and so on, some of the moves, some of the decisions, maybe oversaturating probes, maybe that's the optimal thing to do. I mean, we are really excited for the community to kind of maybe challenge some of the wisdom that has kind of spread amongst top players and, just also players that are trying to learn the game.
And it's amazing to hear you guys actually saying that AlphaStar has discovered strategies that top pros don't really use, like actually, overproducing probes in the Nexus. And actually, maybe there's an opportunity there for us to actually look at what the AI is doing and see that it's maybe discovered something quite interesting for not just the AI to use, but for humans.
What I'm quite shocked about is that obviously this was announced quite some time ago, and you guys have been working on the AlphaStar for quite some time. And the AlphaStar that played against TLO, obviously that's impressive, and it was capable of playing StarCraft, and it won against TLO's Protoss. But the improvement that happened within a week, like, how do you guys think that happened? Because that is remarkable to me, because that is a completely different level.
So much better.
Yeah, that's not one level above. That's like 3 or 4 levels above.
That's great to hear. I mean, obviously the games were seemingly better, and the player we're playing against who wasn't playing in top race was obviously also much better. But yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, once the whole system works, right, the idea of the league that grows, it's in size and it learns more and more strategies and can develop a more solid meta strategy of the game. Well, that really worked and scaled to the next week, as it turned out. It might have not, and I must say some of these games indeed are close. I mean, it's still kind of exciting, of course, to see them, and that's just still like this game is amazing, right? So, but the improvement, was clearly noticeable, I would say,
One thing I must say that I love as well is that it doesn't go for the same build over and over again. I think that proves that we have a pretty awesome game, Vitals, is that there is not one optimal way to always play StarCraft 2.
No, certainly not yet, at least. No. I mean, I don't think that this is the end so far, and it's not the end of the show either. All these replays are going to be online on the DeepMind website, so you can definitely check those out, and I think everybody is going to be downloading this replay pack. But we have one more match here tonight. We're going to have an exhibition match. Mana, you're going to play an even newer version of AlphaGo right now. It's going to be a little bit different. We'll talk about that in a second. But for you coming into this match here tonight, this single game, it's still going to be PvP. It's still going to be on Catalyst. What kind of mindset do you have? Do you have like I'm sure you've been thinking about this a lot. How have you prepared for it?
So this is going to be the revenge, I hope. So I mean, AlphaStar won 5-0 versus TLO, 5-0 versus me. So it's 10-0 against the Pro Gamers and both Team Liquid. So I want to defend the honor of Team Liquid as well in here. So I've been thinking a lot about what to do. And keep in mind, this is still on the old patch, the BlizzCon patch. So I did not get to practice it properly in my home. So all I could do is practice in my mind and prepare the strategies in there.
All right. Well, Mana, we're going to let you go ahead and start setting up. And while Mana is setting up, let's take a look at some footage from when the matches actually took place in December.
For decades, progress in AI has been measured by how well we've succeeded in playing the games that humans play. We've already created systems that can learn to master chess and Go, and many people view StarCraft as the next grand challenge for the AI community. A couple of months ago, we made an explicit choice to try and scale up and speed up the StarCraft project. The way we went about that was to have different versions of the agent compete against each other on something we call the AlphaStar League. This one learning to beat that one, this one learning to beat that one. And that leads them to improve rapidly over time and discover new strategies.
The way it played, you could see it was getting it. StarCraft has imperfect information and is played in real time. It also requires long-term planning and the ability to choose what action to take from millions and millions of possibilities.
Look at Danny, he looks nervous.
We were able to beat Danny, the best DeepMind StarCraft 2 player. That definitely exceeded expectations.
The next step is we're going to book in a pro to play. I think there's nothing better than, you know, a big external test like that to focus the mind.
If they can already beat me, that would be incredible.
I really thought TLO would, beat us.
No matter what happens, just well done. It's been amazing progress, really amazing. Our goal is not just to defeat these players. Our goal is to do it in the right way.
How are you feeling?
Good. I'm a little nervous because
Unlike a human player, AlphaStar can see the whole map at once. But we spoke with TLO and created as level a playing field as is currently possible.
In particular, AlphaStar can't react quicker than a human player can, nor can it execute more actions, clicks per minute, than a human player.
All right, 2 seconds, guys.
I haven't really seen a pro play StarCraft up close. The 800 clicks per minute. I don't understand how anyone can even click 800 times, let alone if doing 800 useful clicks.
after the first match, I knew now it was on. That I actually have to work pretty hard to beat this thing. I didn't want to lose.
Incredibly, the system held up.
I was surprised how strong the agent was. I actually lost every single of the 5 matches.
Did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it.
Yeah?
Hey guys.
Yeah.
It's a bit unfair, all you guys against me. Hopefully I'll get to have a rematch where I get to play my strongest race. Well, then I think I would beat it.
TLO is an amazing player, but he plays Zerg, and our Asians play Protoss for now.
With TLO, there was still that but at the end of it, but he's a Zerg player, and so now we've addressed that but.
I guess they need a Protoss specialist, and that's why I'm here. I'm hoping for a 5-0, not to lose any games, but I think the realistic goal would be 4-1 in my favor.
I think he looks more confident than TLO. TLO was quite nervous before. The room was much more tense this time. Really didn't know what to expect.
He's been playing StarCraft pretty much since he's 5.
I wasn't expecting the AI to be that good. Everything that he did was proper, it was calculated and it was done well. I thought I'm learning something. Yes! Yes! It's much better than I expected it to be. I would consider myself a good player, right? But I lost every single one of 5 games.
We're way ahead of what I thought we would do, given where we were 2 months ago. Just trying to digest it all, actually, but it's very, very cool. I think that progress has been unprecedented.
It's humbling knowing how many people are working on this project with StarCraft 2. Some of the top minds of the world.
These complexities are important to us because they're representative of something bigger. They're representative of challenges that face the whole of AI which haven't yet been solved.
I think everybody's just very excited to see what comes out of this, and hopefully that StarCraft is going to be a part of history when it comes to AI.
Well, this is just so exciting. And while Mana is still setting up a little bit, we have a few questions for you guys, kind of to lead. Like, we've seen a variety of strategies, but do you have like a king strategy so far? Is there an agent of AlphaStar that is better than the rest?
So interestingly, because of the way that AlphaStar trains, we have this league where every single agent is actually trying to defeat all of the other agents it's ever seen before. And what we've seen is that throughout training, there's never been a single strategy that hasn't then been defeated by some new counter strategy. And so, in fact, even when it comes to the end of the training, we see that each of those agents has its own personal weaknesses and can be defeated by some of the other agents in the league.
So there is hope, is what we're saying here for Mana. What is different about this agent that he's about to play?
Right, so as I'm sure Mana has kind of prepared himself to play this one game, we also wanted to prepare something quite special for him. So one thing that we kind of talked a bit about is the lack of a camera, even though there is kind of an implicit camera that looks around and does about 30 screens per minute. So instead of just carrying on training, what we did is we kind of started an agent from scratch that would learn to utilize the camera explicitly. So the agent we're going to see, and we can also show some footage of a previous version of the agent, is actually an agent that in first-person view utilizes, decides where to look, what to do with the camera as well, which perhaps removes, some of these kind of, in terms of fairness, one thing that we could say, well, maybe that part, even though the agent, still acts very locally, maybe that's not so great about it. So we decided to train a brand new agent, really hot off the press. We obviously don't have pros to test this again, so it's the first time we see it play against such a caliber player. We're very excited to see what Mana has in place, and also I've seen some very cool moves or games that the agent has played. So I'm hoping to just see a really entertaining game, hopefully.
It sounds a lot more fair, but to me that also sounds like it could potentially be weaker than what we just saw. Because what we just saw was basically an agent that's all over the place, microing stalkers at 3 places at once, despite the fact that it doesn't have superhuman speed or anything like that. That still seems like something that's a lot harder to pull off with this agent. So would you say it's weaker, or does that not mean anything?
So surprisingly, when we actually started to train this agent, we saw that it started off a little harder. It was harder for the agent to learn how to play using the camera. But over the week or so that we were training this agent, we saw that it started to catch up and eventually became as strong, according to our own evaluations, as the previous agent. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that it will necessarily actually be as effective against pro players. It's, in fact, as Oriol said, is really hot off the press. We just finished training this neural network, and it's literally just been put on this machine to play this game for, and this is the first time we've seen it play a pro. So who knows what's going to happen.
All right, so no big expectations one way or another. It's going to be great. We're going to get into this live game just momentarily. One thing we need to mention, as Tim Morton from Blizzard was talking about earlier, there is not an observer mode yet. So what we'll be watching is actually Mana's point of view. You're going to see what it's like for a pro gamer to actually play StarCraft 2. And so that's going to be exciting. It's going to be fun, a little bit more jumpy than what we were watching before, but this replay as well will be on the DeepMind website.
Yeah, on a personal note, we saw all the games obviously not with an observer mode because it does not exist, but it was exciting also to see the game from the player's perspective, because you can try to gauge how he's feeling, where is he looking at, what's he worried about. It's really also a different way to watch StarCraft that's quite exciting. Obviously, we're not going to see everything that goes on. StarCraft is an imperfect information game. And then also, just to note, indeed, there's no observer mode, but also it must be said that this is a fairly a binary mostly done for research, the StarCraft binary that we're playing. So obviously the live game hopefully goes well, but it's not kind of production level. So let's hope the game works well. But I'm just kind of a caveat, right? So for us to be ready. Yeah,
indeed. All right. Any thoughts before we get into this game, though?
I just want to see a good game. Yeah, I want to see a good game.
Absolutely, good game. We're all excited.
Okay.
That's very much of a StarCraft answer.
All right. Let's go into this game, Roddy, and see what Mana can pull off. Now, again, this is Mana's point of view. It's the same map that we have been on Catalyst. So you see Mana up here. He's going to be the green Protoss. And, of course, we already know where AlphaStar is. It's in the bottom right.
This is very fun for us because, Dan and I had absolutely no idea about any of the games that have been played. We were absolutely kept in the dark about scores. But what we did know is that there was going to be an exhibition match at the end of the day. And the way that I've seen Mana today is kind of similar to how I see him at tournaments. He's pacing a little bit and excited, but at the same time a bit nervous as well. So you could really see that he is taking this match very seriously. And after I saw those previous games, I suddenly understand why.
No, absolutely. And I love the fact that they hid everything from us, Roddy. And we got to kind of learn with everyone else that this was a 10-0 so far, but you know, now we get to see, because as you said, it seems like it could be a little bit weaker here, because like that Stalker game, it felt like, oh my gosh, how can you even, how can you pull this off?
It's remarkable, truly. I mean, the first agent, it looked very beatable. The one that TLO played really felt beatable, even though we saw TLO try different strategies. And TLO is, of course, a great StarCraft 2 player, but he's a lot better with Zerg than he is with Protoss. Then the first game that Mana lost, I'm like, okay, that's a little bit sloppy, Mana. If that would happen in a tournament, we would really criticize him for it. It's like, okay, that's a mistake you're not supposed to make.
Sure.
That was your game. But throughout that best of five, that 5-game series, it's like, okay, I can actually not blame you for losing this game. I can absolutely not blame you for losing this one. And then we just saw game 4, and it's like, yeah, okay, I don't think anybody would beat that.
So Mana now has scouted. He's playing a very standard game at this point. And we see that this agent of AlphaStar has decided to wall that top of that ramp. So, you know, we've seen that off and on, but mostly not happening. Just an interesting thing to note. Probably won't see Adepts coming out right away from Mana because of that.
It is so interesting to think that it started itself that, though, because it has been, you know, playing against itself, the reinforcement learning, and that eventually, you know, one AlphaStar made 2 Adepts and killed a whole bunch of probes from the other AlphaStar. It was like, hey, I should actually start walling off.
My gosh. Put enough AlphaStars in a room for 200 years and you get some very strong strategies.
One of them was the one to open up with a depth. So we're still obviously following Mana's point of view. Mana has not revealed us what kind of a strategy he wants to go for, other than the fact that Mana opened up with the Stalker and the Sentry. I'd still say this is the most common opening among professional StarCraft 2. It's good to scout, it's strong defensively, and it doesn't really have a weakness.
Well, overall, style-wise right now, what we've seen from Mana, he's scouting a lot. He has a probe out on the map that he's checking a lot of areas with. The Stalkers have been back and forth. So Mana's being careful, looking for anything AlphaStar might be doing on his side of the map that could catch him off guard.
Mana hasn't seen a whole lot yet, right? Even though he has been scouting for everything. I don't think he saw units.
I have not seen a single unit yet, so if Mana has,
I'm a little bit surprised by Mana's approach here. It seems like Mana actually wants to get, you know, very aggressive in this game, even though he has a lot of workers. He has too many workers, unless he's learning from AlphaStar already.
Well,
he's like,
he was saying
more probes.
No, this is a real thing. He was saying that maybe he learned something from this. I mean, if AlphaStar went 10-0 against pro gamers by overmaking probes, maybe all of us have been undermaking probes.
This is really fun, but the 2-gate robo opening is, in general, this is the most defensive way I think you can play Protoss with Protoss. Even the Nexus for Mana is quite late, as we are watching Mana's point of view. Mana is scouting at this point on the other side of the map, and he spots that the AlphaStar A has a Stargate.
Wow.
B also has a faster expand.
Yes, and Oracle being made specifically, so Mana is starting to defend against this right away. Wow, really good decision making here. Actually sacrifices the Oracle for a couple of sentries, so that's I don't mind that at all from AlphaStar. I like what he did.
I don't know if I would agree with that. I mean, that's a personal preference, right? Like, obviously picking off sentries of your opponent is awesome, and Mana losing 2 sentries, that absolutely stinks. But I think in general, I would prefer to have an Oracle alive in this phase in the game than picking off 2 sentries. But
well, there is a second Oracle on the way right now. I just caught it on the mini-map. So I think we are going to see one fly in towards that main base, and we'll see if, once again, AlphaStar wants to go for sentries or maybe something else. Now, AlphaStar is actually attacking right into the front with these Stalkers.
At the same time, the second Oracle shows up in the main base as well. Imagine a world where AlphaStar would have had both Oracles alive at this point. Then the Stalker aggression combined with 2 Oracles would have really paid off. But this is still nice. It's an even game, but AlphaStar is definitely dominating the pace of this game.
Roddy, right now, this really looks like I'm watching a professional human gamer from the AlphaStar point of view. You know, watching the fact that AlphaStar is coming into the main, coming into the natural. You know, we kind of see, there's that second Oracle you were talking about as well.
So now 2 Oracles are showing up, and at this point, the shield battery that Mana has in his mineral lines. Okay, the Micro on the Oracle was really good at this point.
Yeah.
The Oracles, the shield battery is out of energy at this point as well, which means it cannot heal up these workers anymore, and AlphaStar has picked up a tremendous amount of workers of Mana.
I'm getting chills right now. Like, what we're seeing from AlphaStar, this feels so far like the most human-like game that we've seen. Just the Oracles coming in and harassing, you know, maybe the Sentry trade wasn't something every pro will do, but overall, very, very good stuff. Now, Mana's fighting back, though. Mana's defending everything, kind of. He's lost probes and whatnot, but doing a bit of counter damage and getting some scouting done as well.
I feel Mana got a lot of damage done here with just 2 adepts. That's not a massive investment in this phase in the game. And these adepts definitely paid for themselves. I am incredibly impressed with everything that AlphaStar is showing when it's attacking. When it comes to defending, it seems like things could be cleaner.
Yeah. So, Mana's still getting very good scouting intel with that observer, seeing exactly what is going on in AlphaStar's base. And that's such an important aspect of this. You know, Mana wants to know, like, is this going to be mass Stalker? And it kind of looks like it.
Mana actually decided to go for his own Stargate, and it's kind of odd timing.
Yeah.
AlphaStar is already going up to 3 bases. I mean, the amount of workers that the AlphaStar was able to pick off in the first few minutes of this game, as Mana is cancelling that Stargate, by the way.
Yeah.
This really starts to seem paying off, and I think that AlphaStar is actually pretty far ahead in this game.
Yeah, AlphaStar is just playing so smartly and comes back in with double Oracle once again.
Yeah.
Eliminating quite a few probes, but Mana did cancel that Stargate like you mentioned. Like, he's getting so much scouting intel that he does know what are the right choices for him, but the fact that Mana is sitting here, like, if you see someone making a bunch of Immortals to you know, counter your Stalkers, what do? You take a 3rd Nexus, and that's exactly what AlphaStar has done here.
And we all, I mean, I love the mobility of the Oracles. The Oracles seems like they're never away from the keyboard. They're always active.
Yeah.
Flying in again once more, picking up. I mean, normally we have an observer interface where we can tell exactly how many workers went down. If I would have to make a rough prediction, I'd say it's been 25 at least in this game, if not more than that. And in StarCraft terms, that is a ridiculous amount of workers to pick off in an 8-minute game.
Yeah, it is a huge amount. Now, it seems to me that Mana is going to be relying this game upon tech, right? It is superior tech. He has a Warp Prism right now with Immortals in it. He's trying to get upgrades. He's trying to utilize these units to counter Stalkers once again. It didn't work in that other game, but maybe here.
Yeah, I like the positioning of the Observer on the left side of Mana. We can see that Mana knows about these Stalkers coming back as well. I think Mana was a little bit worried because the Stalker count was so high that perhaps AlphaStar was actually able to just close out the game on the other side of the map. So Mana is kind of pulling AlphaStar back. And these Immortals are, I mean, this is a dangerous game that Mana is playing, because if this Warp Prism goes down, I think it's safe to say the game goes down for Mana.
Yes, I think you're right. But if Mana can continually lure AlphaStar back, that's a way that Mana can actually gain an advantage.
Another Oracle being produced, by the way. I mean, one Stalker being warped in range of these Immortals. Mana's absolutely striking back here. And
Mana's playing brilliantly. Like, you see those Stalkers continually going back and forth. AlphaStar either doesn't know or doesn't care about the Observer watching his movements. So Mana is just going in and out. Every time AlphaStar leaves, Mana comes back in. Now this is kind of what I'm used to seeing when humans battle AIs, right? Is you're finding something that they're doing that's a mistake and you're making them do it over and over and over.
But, you know, in defense of AlphaStar, AlphaStar is still up on 3 bases.
Oh, no,
Mana
absolutely.
is on 2 bases. But you are spot on. What Mana was doing there was correct. I'm curious to see, I'm curious just to find out why AlphaStar decides that at this phase in the game, it feels like it needs another Oracle. While you would normally say in a professional game, you make a single Phoenix, you shot this Warp Prism down, and you move on with your business and you start focusing on attacking. A single unit out of that Stargate could shut this down, but instead AlphaStar aims to go for another Oracle. And it does keep track of the Warp Prism, which is nice.
It's using the Oracles to watch the Warp Prism, but you're very right. If you make one Phoenix here, Mana has to stop this Warp Prism play. Absolutely.
Now Mana has, you would normally say, a more powerful army, but I think the numbers are still heavily in favor of AlphaStar. Because as annoying as that Immortal, you know, kind of harassment that the Immortal attacks were in the main base of AlphaStar, I don't think it did that much damage. So I really think that there is a chance that AlphaStar has an insane amount of units somewhere.
There are a lot of Stalkers right there for AlphaStar. Mana's army counters it pretty darn well. Look at this, bringing over these other 2 Immortals. This is like 7 Immortals here.
This is interesting to see as well, because now once again, Mana's army is in the middle of the forces of AlphaStar. And this is where things get very interesting, especially with the new camera movement we went over before this game started.
Yeah, previously we saw AlphaStar be able to pick apart an army like this, but Mana's army is stronger than it was in that previous game. This is a ridiculously strong army. The probe's starting to go down heavily. Now, where is AlphaStar? Where's AlphaStar? I don't see AlphaStar's units anywhere.
Recall use, perhaps, unless all the Stalkers decided to attack on the other side of the map. I mean, it's impossible
Shouldn't
for us.
they have hit by now?
Yeah, but they're kind of just running around. The force field being dropped, it really seems like Mana has brought this game back, even though we would use the term outplayed normally. I think in the first 6-7 minutes of this game, Mana was getting outplayed by AlphaStar. At this point, it seems like Mana has created an army that is too much to deal with, even though there's quite a few Oracles, actually.
That is a lot of Oracles. You are right about that. If all of the anti-air units go away, the Oracles actually can clean everything else up, so we should not be counting out AlphaStar yet. But AlphaStar, I don't believe, has really any mining bases, so this is a very uphill battle right now for it.
Well, I think Mana has done it, and that's actually very impressive, because Mana was in a rough position.
Yeah.
But it seems like AlphaStar was quite confused on how it should have dealt with the Warp Prism arrest.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that Mana found in all of the games that we've seen so far, is that the response to the Warp Prism arrest was not optimal.
No, the harassment of that Warp Prism was so important. Just the Immortals overall, it feels like the games in which Mana has made a lot of Immortals are the ones that were a bit closer. But, I mean, AlphaStar is still really trying to hold on. It seems like this is the point of no return, though.
Yeah, the majority of the bases went down. Most of the workers have been picked off, and a few Oracles are not going to save this game. Now, we do know one thing, and we haven't seen it yet because AlphaStar has only been winning so far, but then...
Yes, AlphaStar cannot GG. AlphaStar does not decide that it has lost the game and then leave it. So Mana will have to go to the win condition, which is to destroy every building of AlphaStar. And as you see, there are a few left. AlphaStar has been trying to rebuild, but at this point, we know, as professional commentators, that AlphaStar has a 0% chance to win.
What do you think are the odds of AlphaStar building a pylon in the right top side of the map? Wouldn't that be something?
Watch enough replays, you'll see some humans do that, that's for sure. And that is that. GG. Mana has defeated AlphaStar. What do you guys think about this game that we just saw? Because it started out brilliantly for AlphaStar.
Yeah, awesome. It's great to see that he's really made it. I think there was the interesting War Prism bringing up the two Immortals that I think maybe confused a little bit AlphaStar, but it was like the beginning looked really solid, and Mana has done a great job. I'm looking forward to hearing his thoughts. I think we'll have him here very soon.
Absolutely. He's actually coming up right now, so we'll be talking to him in a second, but what really surprised me about this is it started out looking the most human, like that was the most standard play that we've really seen. You could have mistaken it for a top-tier pro, but then Mana starts to come back and tear it apart with that harassment.
That's right. So first and foremost, congratulations to Mana. That was just an amazing performance. So just really, just wanted to say
thank you. Good game. GG. The agent doesn't GG, but we can.
Yeah, it was very stubborn, wasn't it? Like it really didn't want to leave. Like the game was over for a long time. Such manners.
So Mana, first question that I have for you after the game is the first 5-6 minutes, or maybe 7 minutes. It felt rough. Like it kind of felt like you were being outplayed there.
Yeah, the constant Oracle harassment, but it did some micro mistakes with the Oracle. I think there were times where the AlphaStar could have saved some of the Oracles and decided to simply commit more or just fly around a little bit. So while the first few minutes did look rough, I still think I had a better unit composition, and I could see with the observer. That was my plan to see how much. To see as much as possible with the observer. So because in the previous series that I have played against AlphaStar, I was in the dark. I didn't know what is going on, and the lack of information cost me cutting the economy. That means I will have less army. With less army, I can do less stuff. So with this approach to the game, I was able to see what AlphaStar is going for, and then just react accordingly.
Yeah, and you did just a fantastic job of that. I mean, that was an amazing game. You're the first human to beat AlphaStar as a pro gamer. You guys have any thoughts on that game other than what we've already gone over?
Well, I think the nature of StarCraft is that it's an incredibly rich and amazing space of strategies that can be played by both players. And I guess part of that means that, you know, it's you have to play extremely well, but even the very top players in the world don't win every single game.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think it's really nice to see actually what happens on the other side of the table when actually it's possible to reverse it, and see how what happens when AlphaStar actually loses a game. And so I'm just really grateful for you to actually showing us that side of the game.
Yeah, I'm quite happy for Mana actually, because he played really well in the series, so this is really well deserved, I think.
Indeed.
Well, I want to say, first of all, I really enjoyed that exhibition match as well. It was awesome. Awesome to see Mana pull it back as well. But I think a burning question that every StarCraft 2 fan has that's out there watching the stream right now is, are we going to see AlphaStar play the other races as well? I mean, what about Terran? What about Zerg? Is that something you guys are perhaps planning?
Right. So obviously, this could potentially answer the question, which is the best race in StarCraft. So as a player, I'm super excited to see how AlphaStar is going to play other races. So absolutely would be like, I mean, the approach we take here is not specific to one race. We really picked Protoss just to kind of reduce the amount of matchups and so on. But clearly we can just apply the same sort of technique to get the all versus all matches, and that would be awesome to see.
I think that's something we're all very excited.
Yeah, and to kind of build upon what you're saying here, what is actually in the future for AlphaStar and for DeepMind in this venture?
Right, so many of the sort of techniques we actually borrowed from other fields. In particular, the agent architecture borrows state-of-the-art technology from natural language processing areas like machine translation and so on and so forth. So one thing we're quite hopeful for is to kind of bring back some of these ideas and advances towards those fields, like kind of, for instance, not only natural language processing, translation, just any sequence modeling. This is, at the end of the day, a very complicated sequence task, the sequence of actions that you have to go through. So, for instance, weather predictions, like long-term planning of a very complicated sequence, that's something we would look forward to also thinking about now in the next few months and so on.
And in addition, if you look at the history of AI, there's often been a problem with systems which have somewhat learned for themselves, but a very particular way to deal with a domain, and that can end up being quite brittle. And one of the amazing things about humans is their incredible capability to kind of figure out different ways to solve a problem. And what we were after, and one of the reasons that StarCraft is such an interesting domain, is that it really encourages us to find algorithms that learn for themselves how to deal with a really wide range of different situations and hopefully become quite robust against them. And we think that the AlphaStar League represents a step towards that kind of system.
Wow. Well, I mean, this has just been a fantastic opportunity for the world and the StarCraft community especially to see what you guys have been up to. Do you have any final thoughts?
So I'm actually, my heart is sort of divided into two here. I'm, an AI researcher, and as such, I think it's kind of very satisfying to see the approach of a neural network playing such an amazing game, such as StarCraft 2, play at the pro level. I mean, really challenging the best in the world. That's been fantastic to see the progress, and hopefully people are excited about that. And then in kind of my sort of StarCraft heart, I actually what I'm looking most forward to perhaps is this idea that Mana kind of, and I also said this is very exciting for, perhaps us to learn something. And actually we saw in the game, Mana was doing the probe trick, or I don't know, maybe this will get a name. So and it may have worked quite well for him. Indeed, he won, right? So those sorts of things, as a former StarCraft player, I mean, I'm super excited about those.
Dave, any final thoughts?
I guess the history of AI has been marked by a number of significant benchmark victories in different games. For example, when Deep Blue defeated Garry Kasparov in chess, or when AlphaGo was able to defeat Lisa Doll in the game of Go. And I hope, although there's clearly still some work to do, but I hope that some of the people in the future may look back at some of the events we've seen today and perhaps consider this as maybe another step forward for what AI systems can actually do and achieve.
Well, it certainly feels like it. We want to thank the entire DeepMind team and, of course, Mana and TLO for the games. Don't forget, there's going to be a lot of information, as well as all of the replays, the archive videos and everything going up on the DeepMind site. And don't forget, there will be a Reddit AMA tomorrow with Oriel, Dave, Mana, and TLO. So make sure you tune into that. And other than that, thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.